Tonight we enter the year 2019 when researchers using advanced imaging methods examine damaged clay tablets from the ancient Mesopotamian collections. The process revealed signs hidden beneath crusted surfaces, including marks too faint for earlier cataloguers to read. Such work has been carried out in major museums and universities, where specialists study wedges pressed into clay more than 4,000 years ago. Among the thousands of surviving tablets are legal lists, grain accounts, temple hymns, star records, and stories of kings. Most are practical, some are poetic, a few remain deeply uncertain. You now stand before one such imagined fragment, reconstructed from the atmosphere of real archaeological discoveries. It does not belong to any confirmed museum catalogue, and no established scholar has published a tablet describing a literal 12th code. Yet the idea draws upon genuine Sumerian traditions, where knowledge was arranged in lists, numbered sequences, and sacred systems. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And perhaps you might share your location, along with the local time where you are listening tonight. The room around you feels cooler than expected. Thick stone walls hold the evening air, while dust settles across shelves lined with shallow trays. Inside each tray rests a small piece of ancient clay, brown, cracked, and almost weightless in appearance. The silence is not complete. A ventilation fan turns somewhere beyond the door. Paper shifts beneath a gloved hand. A wooden drawer closes with a restrained click. These modest sounds seem strangely distant beside an object that has survived the rise and collapse of entire kingdoms. You lean closer. The tablet is no larger than your palm. Its edges are broken, and one corner has vanished completely. Across the remaining surface, wedge-shaped impressions form narrow rows. Some are deep and confident, others fade into scratches that might be writing, damage, or wishful thinking. This uncertainty matters. Ancient writing rarely arrives as a complete message waiting patiently to be translated. It survives in fragments, copied texts, repeated formulas, and signs whose meanings shift across centuries. A single damaged mark can change a number, a name, or the entire direction of an interpretation. Scholars at institutions such as the University of Chicago, Yale University, and the University of Oxford have spent generations comparing these signs. Their work has revealed tax systems, marriage contracts, court disputes, school exercises, and prayers whispered toward forgotten gods. Records confirm that Sumerian scribes organized knowledge with extraordinary care. They prepared lexical lists, catalogues of professions, collections of omens, and instructions for ritual practice. Students copied these texts repeatedly until the shape of each sign entered the memory of the hand. The imagined fragment before you appears to belong to that world. Its first visible lines resemble a list. Each entry begins with a repeated sign, followed by a short phrase and a number. The pattern continues through several damaged rows, suggesting an ordered sequence rather than ordinary prose. One line seems to preserve the number 12. That alone would not be remarkable. 12 appears often in ancient systems. It can describe months, measures, groups, offerings, or administrative divisions. Yet the surrounding marks appear different from the language expected in a simple account. The phrase beside the number is difficult. One reading suggests a rule, an order, or an appointed arrangement. Another possibility is a ritual portion. A third interpretation, preferred by more cautious voices, is that the damaged signs cannot support any confident translation at all. This is where the mystery begins. Not with certainty, but with hesitation. Your fingers never touch the clay. Even gentle contact could loosen grains from its surface. Instead, light passes across it from several angles. revealing shallow impressions concealed within the uneven texture. Under this shifting light, one sign seems to resemble the Sumerian word for foundation. Another may indicate heaven, field, or boundary. The marks are too worn to decide. Each possibility opens a different landscape. A foundation suggests law. Heaven suggests astronomy. A boundary suggests land. The tablet remains silent. Still, the arrangement feels deliberate. 11 entries appear to follow a recognizable formula. The 12th breaks the pattern. Its signs are more widely spaced, and a horizontal line separates it from the text below. Such dividing lines were common in ancient documents. They could mark totals, sections, changes of subject, or the end of a composition. Nothing about the line proves secrecy. Nothing proves a forbidden code. Yet human curiosity has always been drawn towards the place where a pattern changes. A quirky detail survives from real scribal culture. Some ancient students left behind clumsy practice tablets covered with repeated signs, corrections, and uneven spacing. Their mistakes remain visible after thousands of years, preserving moments of frustration that feel unexpectedly familiar. Perhaps this fragment also began as a lesson. Perhaps a young scribe copied 11 standard entries, then attempted a difficult 12th. The strange spacing might reflect confusion rather than concealment. The mysterious line may be nothing more dramatic than a teacher dividing one exercise from another. That explanation is almost comforting. Almost. Below the dividing line appears a cluster of numerical signs. Numbers in ancient Mesopotamia were often written through combinations based on 60. This system shaped calculations involving time, angles, trade, and astronomy. Its influence still lingers whenever you divide an hour into 60 minutes. The surviving cluster could represent a quantity of grain. It could mark a distance, a rain, a payment, or a date. Ancient numbers depended heavily upon context, and this context has mostly disappeared. One proposed reading produces a date impossibly early for the tablet itself. Not early by a few years here. Years. Early by many trinkets. No careful historian would publish such a reading without strong support. A copied date might refer to mythic time, a legendary king, a ritual cycle, or a tribal mistake. Might also be a modern misreading caused by damage. Researchers writing in journals such as Nature and Science have shown how new technologies can recover hidden details from ancient objects. Imaging, material analysis, and digital reconstruction sometimes reveal traces invisible to the naked eye. Yet technology does not remove interpretation. It only gives interpretation more material to consider. The scholarly debate remains open whenever a damaged text allows several readings. One group may emphasize grammar, another may prioritize parallel inscriptions, a third may argue that the fragment is too incomplete to support any historical conclusion. You can almost hear their quiet disagreement. No shouting fills the room, no dramatic accusation is made. There are only careful notes, revised drawings, and long pauses over signs that refuse to become certain. Outside, evening settles over the modern city. Car lights pass beyond the museum walls. Somewhere, a telephone rings and stops. The tablet rests beneath soft illumination, carrying its broken sequence through another night. You study the 12th entry again. It may describe a rule. It may describe an offering. It may describe nothing we can recover. Still, the combination of sequence and date creates an unsettling possibility. Perhaps the scribes preserved systems whose meanings were already ancient to them. Perhaps they copied formulas inherited from temples, dynasties, and vanished schools. Long before recorded history became orderly, memories moved through spoken tradition, names changed, numbers expanded, events became symbols, a flood could become an age, a ruler could become a giant, a calendar might become a sacred code. The clay does not confirm such ideas. It merely allows them to breathe. For a moment, the scent of dust and old paper seems stronger. The fan continues turning. The shadows around the tablet deepen, gathering inside every wedge-shaped mark. You begin to understand why an uncertain date might remain unpublished. Scholarship moves carefully because a single dramatic claim can survive longer than its correction. A doubtful reading may become a legend before patient evidence has time to answer. So the fragment waits. Its 12th line remains neither revelation nor mistake. It rests between them, held in the narrow space where evidence ends and imagination begins. And tonight, that narrow space is where you remain. The heat settles over the southern plain before sunrise, pressing softly against the mud-brick walls and empty courtyards. You move through a landscape where rivers divide the earth into channels, fields, reed beds, and settlements raised above the flood. The air carries several scents at once. Wet clay cools beside a canal. Animal dung dries for fuel. Dates ripen in shaded baskets. Farther away, smoke rises from ovens hidden behind low walls. Nothing here looks eternal. Every building seems vulnerable to water, wind, insects, and time. Yet the people who live here have discovered a strange answer to disappearance. They press memory into clay and leave it beneath the sun. A narrow street leads toward a temple storehouse. Its walls lean slightly inward, thick enough to hold back summer heat. Sand collects in the corners. A dog sleeps beside a doorway, barely lifting its head as sandals pass. Inside, the light changes. Sunlight enters through a high opening and falls across jars, baskets, reed mats, and wooden shelves. Clay tablets lie in groups according to purpose. Some record barley, others list sheep, workers, oil, wool, or silver. A few contain matters that cannot be weighed. There are hymns for ceremonies, omens for uncertain nights, and stories shaped by generations of repetition. There are names of gods, names of cities, names of kings, and names of places already forgotten by the scribes themselves. You hear the scrape of a reed stylus. A young apprentice sits cross-legged beside a low bench. His tablet is soft and damp. He presses the cut end of the reed into the surface, producing small wedges that appear simple until you try to imitate them. His teacher watches without kindness or cruelty here. The old man corrects a sign by smoothing the clay with his thumb. The apprentice begins again. This is how an archive grows. Not through sudden revelation, but through repetition, discipline, and sore fingers. Each tablet enters a world of shelves, baskets, rooms, and habits. Each belongs to a system larger than its surviving words. Archaeological excavations in Mesopotamia have uncovered rooms containing hundreds of tablets, sometimes fallen from shelves during fire or collapse. Their original positions can reveal how ancient officials arranged information. A legal text might rest near contracts, while a hymn might appear among school copies. The room itself becomes part of the document. At sites such as Nippur, Ur, and Shurapak, excavators found tablets scattered across floors or buried beneath later construction. Some were carefully stored, others were discarded, reused, or left in rubbish pits after their practical value ended. A receipt for grain could become meaningless within a year. A school exercise could survive for 5,000. That imbalance has a quiet humour. Ancient people preserved what mattered to them, yet chance often chose what mattered to us. A careless student might outlive a careful governor simply because his tablet hardened near a cooking fire. The storehouse deepens into several chambers. You pass baskets sealed with clay tags, each impressed with a mark identifying ownership or quantity. Rope fibres remain visible in some ceilings, preserved as faint grooves. Records confirm that administrators tracked goods with remarkable precision. Workers received measured rations, herds were counted, fields were assessed, deliveries were checked against earlier entries. This was not merely accounting, It was a way of controlling distance. A temple could command grain from fields beyond sight. A palace could monitor labourers who never entered its gates. Writing allowed authority to travel without a person speaking. The tablet became a quiet official. Yet this same system created shadows. Once information was written, it could be separated from the people it described. A worker might become a line, a family might become a ration total, a village might become a place name followed by a number. The clay remembered, but not always kindly. In a side room, broken tablets gather inside a shallow pit. Some were probably discarded after copying, others cracked while drying. Several appear to have been deliberately erased by wetting the surface and smoothing away the signs. Nothing supernatural is required. A mistake could be corrected, an account could be reused, a political name could become inconvenient, a ritual formula might be replaced. The archive was never a perfect mirror of the past. It was edited by ordinary hands. A fringe idea sometimes appears in modern discussions of ancient archives. Some enthusiasts imagine hidden chambers containing forbidden histories, sealed by priests who feared what the tablets revealed. Archaeology offers no secure evidence for such dramatic vaults. Still sealed rooms did exist. Walls were repaired, doorways were blocked, storerooms vanished beneath later floors. Entire districts disappeared under new buildings. A chamber could be forgotten without any conspiracy at all. That possibility is more unsettling. Secrets do not always need guardians. Sometimes they survive because nobody remembers where they were placed. You continue into a cooler chamber where shelves rise against the walls. Reed baskets hold tablets upright. Small labels identify groups by the subject or office. The organisation appears practical, but not completely familiar. A sequence of callers concerns offering. Another group records lunar observations. A third contains copied lists whose purpose is difficult to understand. Some lists arrange words by sound, others classify trees, stones, animals, professions, cities, and divine names. These catalogues suggest a desire to gather the world into order, one category at a time. Scholars continue debating whether such lists were primarily educational, administrative, intellectual, or sacred. The answer may differ from one archive to another. A list could train memory, preserve vocabulary, standardize knowledge, and express a vision of cosmic order. You pause beside a basket marked with a simple sign. Inside are fragments from several compositions. Their surfaces vary in colour. Some were fired accidentally. Others remained pale and fragile. One bears fingerprints along its edge, left by the person who shaped it. The ridges are small. They belong to someone whose name is gone. Perhaps the tablet maker was a child, perhaps an apprentice, perhaps a worker assigned to prepare clay for educated scribes. The print survives where the voice does not. From the courtyard comes the distant call of a vendor. A donkey complains beneath a load. Reeds rustle along the canal. Life continues outside the archive, noisy and repetitive, and unconcerned with future historians. Within the shelves, however, time has begun to fold. A tablet may describe a delivery made yesterday. Another copies a hymn composed centuries earlier. A third names a king whose reign has become legendary. All occupy the same room. The archive does not separate past and present as neatly as you do. For the scribe, an ancient text may remain active. A ritual performed today can repeat words believed to come from a distant age. A list copied by many generations can still guide a student's hand. The old survives by becoming useful. This explains why strange fragments can preserve ideas far older than their clay. A tablet may be newly made while its wording belongs to forgotten centuries. Copying renews the object but obscures the age of the tradition. A date written on such a tablet may describe the moment of writing. It may refer to a reign, a mythic calculation, a ceremonial cycle, or an earlier source. The room grows darker as the sun lowers. A servant lights a small oil lamp. Its flame trembles. casting shadows across the shelves. The smell of burning oil mixes with clay, reed, and dust. Every tablet now seems to hold more than text. Each carries the shape of a hand, the habits of an institution, the fears of an administrator, and the discipline of a student. Each belongs to a living network of memory. Outside, the river moves in silence. Inside, the shelves wait. A pale morning light spreads across the worktables of chaos, touching the tablet's broken surface without warming it. You sit beside a scholar who has spent years learning how ancient signs change across centuries, cities, and scribal traditions. The first task is not translation, it is recognition. Every wedge must be separated from accidental scratches, mineral stains, cracks, and damage left by burial. A shallow mark may belong to the original inscription. It may also come from a root pressing through the soil long after the tablet was lost. The scholar turns the object slightly. A vertical wedge appears beside two angled impressions. Together they might form a known sign, yet one damaged corner removes the final stroke, leaving several possible readings open. This is where certainty becomes expensive. A confident translation may sound impressive, but confidence cannot restore missing clay. The responsible reader must carry several possibilities at once, even when one interpretation feels more elegant than the rest. The repeated entries seem orderly. Each line contains a number, a term, and a concluding phrase. The structure resembles a list of regulations, ritual stages, or instructional formulas. The 12th entry behaves differently. Its number is clear enough. 12 short vertical impressions stand in a grouped arrangement, divided according to the old counting system. The difficulty begins with the signs that follow. One sign can mean command, and another can mean judgment. A third may refer to a fixed portion, a decree, or an assigned duty. Their shapes overlap because writing developed through centuries of simplification and regional habit. A modern reader expects one word to carry one stable meaning. The ancient scribe worked within a denser world. A sign could represent a word, a syllable, an idea, or a sound used inside another word. Context decides almost everything. You watch the scholar copy the line onto paper. Each wedge is drawn with controlled care. Broken areas remain blank rather than reconstructed for convenience. The restraint feels almost severe. There is a temptation to complete patterns. Human vision dislikes gaps. It searches for the familiar shapes in clouds, shadows, and damaged texts. A missing sign invites the mind to supply what seems most satisfying. That instinct has misled many interpreters. Records confirm that early translators sometimes forced difficult inscriptions into expected biblical, royal, or mythological frameworks. Later scholarship corrected many such readings by comparing larger collections and better understood grammar. The lesson remains uncomfortable. A plausible reading can still be wrong. The phrase called the 12th code may not be a formal title at all. It may simply describe the 12th item in a sequence. The word translated as code could refer to a measured rule, a legal decision, a ritual ordinance, or a scribal classification. Even the number may require caution. Ancient numerical signs could shift value depending upon context. A cluster might represent 12, a 720, or a fraction, according to the unit being counted. Without a clear measure sign, arithmetic becomes uncertain. Still, the sequence has a deliberate shape. The first entries use repeated language associated with boundaries, obligations, and appointed shares. The 12th replaces this pattern with a phrase that may concern concealment, enclosure, or separation. The difference draws your attention quietly. No dramatic symbol announces a forbidden teaching. No warning threatens the reader. There is only a subtle change in vocabulary, followed by an unusual spacing between signs. The scholar considers a legal interpretation. Mesopotamian law was not organised exactly like a modern legal code. Surviving collections often present model cases, judgments, and royal statements. They reveal values and procedures, but they do not always function as complete statutes. A 12th entry could therefore preserve a case. Perhaps it concerns land removed from communal use. Perhaps it defines a temple reserve. Perhaps it assigns grain to a group whose name has disappeared. This explanation fits the administrative world well. Then another possibility appears. The final sign resembles one used in ritual instructions for sealing, closing, or restricting access. In temple settings, some spaces and objects were reserved for particular officials. Certain knowledge also passed through trained specialists rather than public reading. The term secret may be too dramatic.
Restricted would be safer.
A curious fringe theory claims that numbered instructions like these encode stages of lost celestial knowledge. Supporters point toward the importance of 12 months, 12 divisions of the sky, and repeated numerical patterns across ancient cultures. The resemblance is interesting. It is not proof. 12 emerges naturally from lunar observation and practical division. It appears in calendars because roughly 12 lunar cycles fit within a solar year. It appears in measures because 12 divides easily into halves, thirds, quarters, and sixths. An ancient system can look mysterious simply because it was efficient. The scholar places transparent film over a photograph of the tablet. On the film, possible sign boundaries are traced in different colours. One colour marks secure wedges, another marks doubtful impressions, a third marks damage. The 12th line contains more uncertainty than certainty, yet its grammatical ending appears complete. That small survival matters. The final form suggests the sentence belongs to a sequence of actions or declarations. It does not read like a random note added by another hand. Several scholars might still disagree. One could argue that the text describes agricultural distribution. Another might identify a liturgical list. A third could believe the fragment belongs to a school tradition whose categories remain unknown. The debate remains open because each view explains part of the evidence. None explains everything. You consider how easily the phrase 12th code acquires weight in modern language. It sounds final, hidden, and dangerous. The original scribe may have understood it as something far more ordinary. The 12th allocution, the 12th ruling, the 12th recitation. Words gather drama as they travel. A code becomes a mystery, a date becomes a prophecy, a damaged line becomes a secret removed from history. None of these transformations requires deliberate deception. They grow through repetition, imagination, and the human preference for complete stories. Still, ordinary explanations can contain their own darkness. A legal rule may reveal inequality, a ritual instruction may exclude most of society, an allocation list may show how institutions controlled food, labour, and land. The tablet need not describe visitors from the sky to feel unsettling. It may describe power. The scholar returns to the first sign after the number. A parallel text from another city uses a similar form in a list of temple duties. There, the word means an appointed obligation performed at a fixed time. This comparison narrows the possibilities. The 12th entry may describe a duty assigned according to a calendar. The unusual final phrase could indicate that the duty is suspended, concealed, or transferred when a certain date arrives. The date itself remains damaged. Only part of the month name survive. A numeral follows, but its value depends upon whether the missing unit sign referred to days, years, or cycles. A careful note is added beside the drawing. Possible reading only. The phrase carries no grandeur, yet it protects the boundary between discovery and invention. Without such restraint, every uncertain mark could become whatever the reader most desires. You lean closer as the light changes. The wedges now resemble tiny doorways pressed into clay. Each opens towards several meanings, but only one path may have existed for the original scribe. That path is gone. The tablet offers structure without explanation. It preserves a 12th position, an altered formula, and a damaged numerical statement. Together they suggest a system, but not its purpose. So perhaps the sequence governed land. Perhaps it ordered ritual time. Perhaps it trained students to classify rules. The clay gives no final answer. Its mystery lies not in what it reveals, but in how carefully it refuses to reveal more. The stylus rests between the scribe's fingers like a small instrument of weathered authority. Its reed tip is cut at an angle, polished by use, and darkened by damp clay. You hear the soft press of each mark. A short wedge enters first, then another follows beside it. The movement is practiced, almost musical, yet every impression demands attention. One misplaced angle may alter a word, a number, or a divine name. The scribe works near an open courtyard. Warm air passes through a woven screen. Somewhere beyond the wall, workers unload baskets from a donkey cart. The scent of crushed reeds mingles with lamp smoke and sun-heated mud brick. He does not write for strangers in another age. He writes for a supervisor, a temple official, or a teacher who expects precision. His concerns are immediate. The grain must be counted, the ritual must be copied, the sequence must remain recognizable. Yet his hand enters history. The person shaping the signs may belong to a family trained across generations. Scribal education often required years of copying vocabulary, model contracts, hymns, proverbs, and mathematical exercises. The work could be exhausting. Students repeated signs until their wrists ached. Teachers corrected errors without ceremony. A poorly formed line might be scraped away, smoothed over, and written again before the clay began to dry. Some school tablets preserve both the teacher's model and the student's imitation. The contrast can be almost affectionate. Though nobody intended it, one side appears balanced and controlled. The other leans, stumbles, and grows increasingly crowded. A human hand is always visible. You can imagine the apprentice watching an older scribe prepare a difficult sequence. The master speaks each term aloud, perhaps slowly at first, then with growing impatience. The student repeats the words. Sound matters because while writing does not float alone. The signs belong to spoken language, professional memory, and local pronunciation. A phrase understood clearly in one city may become unfamiliar in another. Copies therefore change. A scribe may replace an old sign with a newer form. He may modernize a word, he may preserve an expression without understanding its original meaning. He may add an explanation beside a difficult passage. These changes are not necessarily careless. They're often attempts to keep a text alive. Records confirm that Mesopotamian composition survived through repeated copying across long periods. Some works appear in several versions, with altered lines, added passages, and regional differences. There was rarely one perfect original waiting untouched. A text moved through hands. Each hand carried its own habits. One scribe preferred compact spacing, another stretched lines across the clay, one used older signs to display learning, another simplified everything for speed. You begin to notice these personalities. On one fragment, the signs narrow toward the bottom because the scribe misjudged the available space. On another, several lines tilt upward, as though the writer slowly lost patience with the edge. A third tablet bears a thumbprint pressed across the final sentence. Perhaps someone lifted it too soon. Perhaps the mark came from a teacher checking the work. Perhaps a servant moved the tablet before it dried. The accident survives more clearly than the person's name. The sequence associated with 12 may have travelled in this way. A teacher could preserve it from an older exemplar. A student might copy it without context. A temple scholar might adapt it for a new ceremony. The phrase could remain sahulsu while its purpose changed. This happens often in long traditions. Words outlive the situation that first gave them meaning. They become formulas, repeated because repetition itself carries authority. A command may become a prayer. An observation may become an omen. A practical rule may become sacred because nobody remembers who created it. There is a quiet debate among scholars over how much ancient scribes understood the oldest material they copied. Some argue that trained specialists possessed deep knowledge of archaic language and ritual. Others suspect that certain passages were already obscure, preserved through habit rather than comprehension. Both possibilities may be true. A learned scribe could explain one ancient phrase and remain puzzled by it. Education does not remove uncertainty, it merely teaches a person how to handle uncertainty with dignity. The clay surface offers traces of this struggle. One sign appears erased and rewritten. The replacement is larger than the surrounding marks, its wedges cut deeply, suggesting hesitation followed by firm correction. Why was the first version rejected? The scribe may have copied the wrong word. He may have chosen between two traditions. He may have consulted another tablet and changed the reading. The correction becomes a silent argument. No explanation accompanies it. There is only the altered surface, where old marks remain faintly visible beneath the new ones. A fringe suggestion proposes that such corrections hide deliberate censorship. According to this idea, scribes removed dangerous knowledge when political or religious authorities changed. That sometimes happened in ancient societies. Royal names were erased, images were damaged, official stories were revised. Yet most corrections on school and administrative tablets have simpler causes, including mistakes, damaged exemplars, and changing conventions. The ordinary explanation deserves respect. Still, ordinary changes can reshape memory as effectively as censorship. A copied error may become standard. A misunderstood term may acquire a new meaning. A missing line can alter the logic of an entire sequence, or history often drifts without permission. You hear the master scribe speaking again. His voice is low and measured. He recites a formula about appointed times, divided portions, and a final condition that closes the sequence. The apprentice follows, pressing signs into fresh clay. The 12th entry arrives. The master slows. Perhaps the language is old, perhaps the grammar feels ceremonial, perhaps he's simply tired. The apprentice glances upward, waiting for the next phrase. A pause enters the room. The master repeats the line using different words. The student copies only the formal version. Spoken explanation disappears, while the older phrase remains. That vanished explanation may have contained everything. It might have clarified whether the date referred to a ritual cycle, a political event, or a mythic era. It might have identified the object being sealed, the duty being assigned, or the boundary being marked. Nothing preserves the teacher's gesture. Nothing records the apprentice's confusion. Only the clay remains. You begin to understand that tablets preserve voices unevenly. Kings speak loudly because their inscriptions were carved for endurance. Officials speak often because administration produces records. Priests speak through rituals copied repeatedly. Labourers appear mostly as numbers. Women appear in contracts, household records, hymns, and legal disputes. Yet many personal voices remain distant. Children appear through schoolwork. Enslaved people appear through transactions written by others. The archive has a shape. It remembers those closest to writing more clearly than those who lived beyond it. A council decree proves that scribes could define obligations with exact language. A hymn shows they could also create tenderness, fear, and cosmic wonder. A school proverb reveals impatience, humour, and social ambition. One proverb complains about a student who avoids lessons and wanders through public places. The complaint feels remarkably modern. Even ancient education had its distracted pupils and weary instructors. The scribe before you smiles briefly at something outside the doorway. Then the expression disappears. He returns to the tablet and completes the final sign. The surface now holds a sequence that may be copied again next month, next year, or several centuries later. Its future depends on usefulness. If officials need it, the text survives. If teachers value it, students repeat it. If rituals require it, priests preserve its wording. If nobody understands it, the sequence may still continue because age itself commands respect. The tablet begins drying beneath the afternoon air. Its colour slowly lightens. The signs harden into permanence, though their meaning remains vulnerable. The voice is fixed. The understanding is not. You listen to the last scratch of the stylus, and the room settles into a silence filled with words nobody can hear completely. The numerical cluster sits beneath the final line like a small doorway into impossible time. Its wedges are shallow, compressed, and partly swallowed by a fracture crossing the lower surface. You follow the scholar's pencil as each surviving mark is copied into a clean grid, where spacing becomes as important as shape. Ancient dates rarely behave like modern dates. A scribe might identify a year through the name of a ruler, a military campaign, a temple dedication, or an unusual flood. Another record might count months within an official calendar, while a ritual text could use numbers symbolically rather than historically. The cluster contains 3 groups. The first may indicate a completed cycle, the second a smaller division, and the third an uncertain total. No month name survives clearly enough to anchor the calculation. The result depends upon how the missing sign is restored. One restoration produces an ordinary administrative date. It places the event within a known reign, close to other tablets found in the same archaeological layer. Such a reading would attract little public attention, though it might still matter greatly to specialists studying local institutions. Another restoration produces a far older date. The number reaches backward beyond the earliest surviving cities, beyond known writing, and into a period when southern Mesopotamia looked very different. Marshes shifted across the plain, shorelines moved, and communities lived without monumental temples or royal archives. That calculation creates the troubling sentence whispered around the work table. No scholar would publish it without stronger evidence. The hesitation does not prove suppression. It reveals how historical claims are tested, challenged, and often abandoned when one damaged sign carries too much weight. You notice how easily caution can resemble fear from the outside. A researcher delays publication, and rumour imagines a forbidden truth. A museum relabels an object, and speculation imagines secret pressure. Yet responsible scholarship often moves slowly because ancient evidence is fragile and sensational mistakes travel quickly. The disputed date may rely upon a place value problem. Mesopotamian mathematics used a system based upon 60, but written numbers did not always include a clear marker for scale. The same arrangement could represent a small amount, a much larger total, or a fraction, depending upon context. A modern decimal point would help, but none appears. The reader must infer magnitude from the surrounding words. When those words are damaged, the number floats between several possible values, each mathematically valid and historically different. Researchers from universities including Yale University and the University of Chicago have shown how mathematical tablets preserve sophisticated calculations involving areas, volumes, reciprocal tables, and complex exercises. These texts prove that scribes handled numbers with remarkable skill, though they do not make every surviving total easy to interpret. The questionable sequence may not be a calendar date at all. It could describe grain capacity, the length of a canal, the size of a field, or the accumulated duration of ritual service. A damaged unit sign might turn apparent years into measures, changing the entire meaning quietly. The scholar checks parallel texts from other collections. Several contain similar numerical endings, but none matches perfectly. One relates to lunar observation, another concerns agricultural labour. A third belongs to a hymn whose numbers seem symbolic rather than practical. The comparisons provide possibilities, not certainty. This is the slow labour of ancient history, where meaning gathers through resemblance, repetition, and careful disagreement. One matching phrase may illuminate a line, while one missing sign can return everything to uncertainty. A quirky detail complicates the calculation. Some scribes wrote enormous numbers in royal and mythological lists, assigning extraordinary reign lengths to rulers placed in distant time. These figures were not necessarily intended as ordinary chronological records in the modern sense. The Sumerian king list contains rulers whose reigns stretch across implausibly long spans before a catastrophic flood. Later reigns become shorter and more historically recognizable. Scholars debate how mythology, political legitimacy, numerical symbolism, and older traditions shaped that remarkable pattern. The disputed tablet may preserve a related habit. Its number could point towards sacred time, where duration expresses greatness, remoteness, or cosmic order rather than measured years. An ancient reader might understand the figure symbolically, without considering it deceptive. Yet symbolic numbers can preserve historical echoes. A vast reign might contain a memory of dynastic succession compressed into one legendary figure. A ritual cycle might reflect long observation of the heavens. Myth and record do not always stand on opposite sides. Your eyes return to the broken unit sign. One wedge angles downward near the crack. Under normal light it resembles damage. Under stronger illumination it appears deliberate. Perhaps the surviving corner of a chronological marker. The room grows quiet as a digital model rotates on the screen. Light moves across the scanned surface from dozens of directions. Minute shadows reveal ridges invisible during ordinary examination, including a possible wedge hidden beside the fracture. The new mark does not solve the problem, it creates another reading. Under one interpretation, the numerical line refers to a time before kingship entered a particular city. Under another, it describes the number of offerings assigned before a ceremonial transfer. Both readings fit parts of the grammar. The open scholarly debate now concerns genre, a legal tablet, an astronomical list, and a ritual composition can use similar words differently. Until the fragment is placed within the correct textual family, the number remains suspended between history and ceremony. Genre sounds like a dry concern, yet it changes everything. A flood in a tax account means damaged fields. A flood in a royal inscription may display divine judgment. A flood in myth may divide one age of humanity from another. The same word opens different worlds. The imagined phrase beside the date appears to mean when the order was established. That translation seems straightforward until the verb is examined more closely. It can also suggest fixing, founding, appointing, or placing something into its proper position. If the object is a law, the phrase marks legislation. If the object is a constellation, it marks cosmic arrangement. If the object is a temple duty, it marks institutional memory. The missing noun decides the matter, and the noun is gone. A fringe researcher proposes that the number records a civilization existing before known urban settlement. The idea spreads because it offers a complete story. It transforms damage into secrecy, uncertainty into proof, and one numerical possibility into a lost historical age. Mainstream archaeology provides no secure evidence for an advanced Sumerian civilization before the development of early cities. Excavated layers show gradual changes in settlement, agriculture, trade, craft specialization, and political organization across long periods. That gradual history remains astonishing. Communities reshaped wetlands, maintained canals, transported stone across great distances, and built institutions capable of organizing thousands of people. No hidden super-civilization is required for the achievement to feel immense. Still, gradual development does not mean complete understanding. Shoreline changes have buried or submerged early settlements. Rivers have erased occupation layers. Later cities were built over earlier ones, crushing and confusing the evidence beneath repeated construction. An ancient date could preserve memory from a world archaeology has only partly recovered. Oral traditions may have carried stories of abandoned settlements, severe floods, distant migrations, and sacred foundations. These memories could become compressed into numbers and formulas. Perhaps the date marks no single event. It may represent a threshold, a division between remembered order and imagined beginnings. The 12th entry then becomes less like a law and more like the final stage of a sequence leading beyond ordinary time. The scholar writes 3 possible calculations in the margin. One is historically comfortable, one is uncertain but plausible, one reaches into an age unsupported by current evidence, none is crossed out completely. That restraint keeps the mystery honest. The earliest date remains present, not as a conclusion but as a warning about how much can depend upon one damaged wedge. You watch the pencil pause beside it, then add a quiet question mark. The mark is small, almost apologetic, yet it contains the entire distance between what the tablet may say and what anyone can responsibly claim. In that narrow distance, the impossible date continues to wait. The conference room smells faintly of coffee, paper, and old wool coats. Around the long table sit specialists who have spent decades learning how uncertainty behaves inside damaged texts. Their voices remain calm, but their conclusions begin moving in very different directions. One scholar studies grammar. Another studies the tablet's clay and firing conditions. A third examines the numerical system, while a fourth compares the signs with ritual compositions from other cities. Each person sees the same object, yet each approaches it through a different discipline. The disagreement begins with the word placed beside the number 12. The grammatical specialist reads it as an appointed order, probably connected with institutional duties. The legal historian prefers a ruling, perhaps issued through a temple court or palace office. The historian of religion remains unconvinced. She notes that similar wording appears in purification instructions and ceremonial schedules. To her, the sequence may describe stages performed during a festival, with the 12th stage reserved for a restricted group. None of these readings is foolish. Each rests upon genuine parallels, accepted sign values, and reasonable historical context. The difficulty is not ignorance. The difficulty is that ancient language often permits several defensible paths before the evidence becomes too weak to guide anyone further. You listen as the clay specialist introduces another problem. Mineral traces within the tablet suggest that it was made from local river sediment, but the mixture does not match the finest scribal tablets from major urban schools. It may come from a provincial archive. That possibility changes the debate. Provincial scribes could preserve local vocabulary absent from famous collections. They might follow older conventions, spell words differently, or combine administrative and ritual material in ways that seem unusual to modern categories. The legal historian sees opportunity in this. A local institution may have maintained a 12-part sequence governing land, offerings, or labour. The strange terminology could belong to regional practice rather than hidden doctrine. The astronomer at the table raises a quiet objection. Several signs surrounding the number can also describe fixed stations, appointed periods, and ordered movements. In astronomical contexts, such language may refer to celestial bodies entering expected positions. The room becomes still. Nobody claims the tablet is an astronomical masterpiece. No star name survives clearly, no planetary sequence appears, yet the possibility cannot be dismissed simply because the fragment lacks the vocabulary modern readers expect. Ancient disciplines overlapped. A ritual date could depend upon lunar observation. A legal deadline could follow a festival calendar. Agricultural work could be assigned through seasonal star appearances. The same phrase might belong to administration, religion, and astronomy at once. Modern categories begin to feel too narrow. A professor from an American university once described such tablets as documents from a world where practical and sacred knowledge were often woven together. The observation is useful because it explains why classification becomes difficult. One text can govern grain, ceremony, and cosmic order without contradiction. The debate shifts toward the suspicious date. The numerical specialist argues that the largest possible value should be rejected because the missing unit makes it statistically unlikely. Comparable tablets usually favour a smaller reading in similar positions. The astronomer disagrees gently. Statistical patterns help only when the genre is secure. If the text belongs to an unusual ceremonial sequence, the expected numerical range may not apply. A younger researcher suggests that the date could be retrospective. The scribe may have copied an older foundation tradition onto newer clay, preserving a claimed beginning rather than a measured historical event. That suggestion attracts interest. Ancient institutions often strengthened authority by linking themselves to distant origins. A temple might trace its rights to a legendary ruler. A city could describe its laws as restorations of an ancient order rather than recent innovations. The older the origin, the stronger the claim. This does not mean the scribes were lying. Sacred history and political memory follow different rules from modern academic chronology. A community could treat a legendary foundation as true because it defined identity, duty, and continuity. The historian of religion opens a notebook filled with parallel phrases. One text describes divine ordinances established before a city's walls. Another presents sacred offices as gifts from a primordial age. A third connects human labour with arrangements created by the gods. The 12th entry may belong to that tradition. If so, the unusual date does not record an archaeological civilization waiting to be discovered. It records how an ancient institution imagined its own depth, placing present customs inside a timeline reaching beyond ordinary memory. The legal historian remains cautious. Mythic language can appear inside practical documents, but the tablet's list structure still resembles regulation. She proposes that a historical rule was framed with sacred authority. Such combinations were common. A ruler might issue a judgment under divine protection. A contract could invoke a god as witness. A boundary stone might describe land rights alongside curses against anyone who disturbed the agreement. Law did not stand outside your religion. A quirky piece of evidence enters the discussion through a badly shaped sign. One participant believes it was written by a left-handed scribe because several wedges lean against the usual direction. Another suggests the tablet was rotated during writing. The idea produces restrained amusement. Even serious scholarship has room for small human puzzles. A writer's posture, damaged stylus, or awkward working surface can alter signs enough to mislead readers thousands of years later. The laughter fades and the argument resumes. A philologist from the University of Oxford proposes that the phrase translated as concealment may instead mean enclosure. The distinction appears minor, but its consequences are large. Concealment suggests restricted knowledge. Enclosure suggests a physical boundary. The temple interpretation now changes. The 12th rule could concern an enclosed courtyard, sealed chamber, protected field, or storage area. The mysterious code becomes an instruction about access rather than secrecy. Another scholar points toward labour records. Certain workers were assigned to enclosed estates or controlled workshops. The disputed line may identify the final category within such a system. The numerical date could then mark a delivery cycle. This reading is sober, practical, and historically plausible. It also fails to explain why the language shifts so sharply in the last entry. The list seems to move from repeated formulas into a more ceremonial register. That unevenness keeps the argument alive. The tablet may combine material from several sources. A scribe could have copied 11 administrative rules and added a final sacred formula. He might have joined two traditions because both concerned the same institution. Composite texts are not unusual. Ancient works often grew through accumulation. New lines entered older compositions. Marginal notes became part of later copies. Explanations merged with original wording until no reader could separate them confidently. The 12th code may therefore be younger than the first 11, or older. Perhaps it was added to complete an incomplete system. Perhaps it survived from an earlier sequence and was attached to a newer list. The physical tablet cannot reveal the age of every sentence equally. The open scholarly debate now centres upon sequence. Does the 12th item conclude the list, interrupt it, or transform it? The answer determines whether the final line is administrative closure, ritual climax, or evidence of textual layering. No vote is taken. Scholarship rarely ends through simple agreement. Articles appear, colleagues respond, new fragments emerge from collections or excavations. A reading that seems strong today may weaken when another tablet supplies better context. The process is slow by design. Outside the meeting room, fictional versions would travel faster. A headline could declare that historians suppressed a forbidden date. A video could transform professional hesitation into fear. A rumour could turn competing translations into a conspiracy. Inside the room, the truth is less theatrical. Nobody is frightened by the tablet. They are frightened of overstating it. The distinction matters because reputation, public understanding, and historical memory can all be damaged by one careless claim. A dramatic interpretation may survive even after specialists abandon it. You watch the participants gather their papers. No final translation has emerged. Instead, the tablet now possesses several carefully defined possibilities, each limited by evidence. The uncertainty has not become smaller, but it has become more precise. That is progress. The mysterious line remains unsettled because responsible disagreement protects it from becoming whatever the loudest reader desires. The silence around the date is not empty. It is filled with caution, discipline, and unfinished thought. Night settles over the plain with unusual clarity. The heat releases its grip, and the sky opens above the darkened rooftops like an immense black chamber. You stand beside an observer who watches the heavens with patience rather than wonder, because wonder alone cannot keep a calendar. He tracks the moon's thin edge as it appears after sunset. He notes where a bright planet rises against familiar stars. He counts the days between one visible pattern and the next, pressing small marks into welts of clay while insects stir among the reeds. The heavens do not repeat perfectly. Clouds interrupt observation. Dust hides the horizon. The moon appears earlier or later than expected. A month may need adjustment, and a festival may drift away from the season it was meant to honour. This is where cycles become practical. Farmers need to know when water will rise. Priests need to know when ceremonies should begin. Officials need to know when taxes, labour duties, and offerings are due. A calendar is therefore not merely a record of time, it is a structure placed over uncertainty. The number 12 fits naturally into this structure. Roughly 12 lunar months pass during one solar year. Though the fit remains imperfect, that mismatch creates a problem requiring correction, observation, and authority. A 13th month may be inserted. The decision is not casual. It affects planting, Ritual schedules, wages, and the timing of obligations, someone must determine when the calendar has drifted far enough to require repairs. You begin to sense why a numbered rule might belong beside a date. The 12th code may describe the point at which a sequence is completed. Reviewed or reset, its purpose could involve keeping human order aligned with celestial movement. That alignment would feel sacred and administrative at once. The observer turns toward a low table. Several tablets rest there, each containing rows of numbers. Some record lunar appearances, others list intervals, one compares expected events with what was actually seen. Records confirm that Mesopotamian scholars developed long traditions of systematic celestial observation. Their work eventually produced detailed records of lunar eclipses, planetary movement, and recurring astronomical patterns. Such knowledge did not emerge suddenly. It grew through generations of watching, copying, correcting, and comparing. One observer could not discover a long cycle alone. The archive allowed many lifetimes to behave like one extended memory. This is the quiet power of written numbers. A pattern invisible within a single life may become clear across centuries. Repeated observations can reveal that events return after long intervals, though never with complete simplicity. The imagined tablet sequence now takes on another possibility. 11 entries may describe stages within a cycle, while the 12th marks completion. The unusual final formula could instruct the reader to close, reset, or transfer the count. The date beneath it may not identify a single historical day. It may identify the beginning of a repeating system. A cycle can look like a timeline when removed from context. A large number may appear to reach into remote antiquity, while the original writer intended it as the total duration before recurrence. The difference is easy to miss. Imagine a record stating that a pattern returns after many thousands of days. A later reader, unfamiliar with the unit, might mistake the total for years. The result would create an impossible date without requiring any hidden civilization. Numbers carry authority because they seem precise. Yet precision without context can mislead more effectively than vague language. A single unit changes everything, especially when that unit is damaged, omitted, or assumed. The scholar studying the numerical line notices repeated factors. The total can be divided cleanly by 12 and 60, and several smaller numbers important within Mesopotamian calculation. This mathematical neatness suggests design, rather than ordinary chronology. The sequence may be schematic. Ancient scribes often preferred numbers that divided elegantly. Such values made calculations easier and could also express harmony, completeness, or balance. A quirky tradition appears in several ancient texts where enormous totals are built from highly factorable numbers. To a modern reader, they can seem fantastical, yet to a trained scribe they may display mathematical order rather than literal duration. The tablet's largest possible value behaves in this way. It breaks into smaller cycles with unusual grace. 12 units form one group, 5 groups form another. A larger total returns the sequence to its beginning. The pattern feels intentional. Still, elegance does not prove meaning. Many numbers can be rearranged until they appear significant. Modern interpreters often discover patterns because they keep searching after less exciting explanations have failed. The open debate concerns whether numerical symmetry reflects ancient intention or modern selection. One scholar sees a calendar, another sees ritual counting, a third warns that damaged values invite pattern making. You listen to the arguments without choosing. The night sky remains above them, indifferent to interpretation. A bright planet moves slowly near the horizon. The observer marks its position, unaware that distant readers may someday argue over the purpose of his record. Cycles also shaped royal thought. Kings presented themselves as restorers who returned society to proper order. Temples were rebuilt according to ancient plans. Rituals renewed relationships between cities, rulers, gods, and seasons. Time could therefore move in circles as well as lines. A city might decline, then be restored, a festival might end one period and begin another, a ruler might claim to renew an order established in remote antiquity. The 12th code could belong to such a renewal. Perhaps it described the final condition required before a cycle began again. Perhaps it marked the transfer of authority from one office to another. Perhaps it closed an old account so a new one could open. This would explain the language of enclosure or concealment. A completed cycle might be sealed, archived, or removed from active use. The final entry could concern closure rather than secrecy. You hear the click of a container lid. Finished tablets are placed inside a basket, separated from fresh records. A label identifies the cycle they belong to. When the sequence ends, the basket is closed and moved to storage. The act is practical. It is also symbolic. To seal a completed record is to declare that one order has ended. A new series may begin under a fresh date, while the old one remains as authority, precedent, or warning. The imagined sequence of 12 may therefore describe a system of renewal. Each stage carries a function, and the final stage protects the transition. This pattern appears across human societies. Months return, crops return, offices return through succession, rituals repeat because repetition creates continuity, even when the people performing them have changed. A hidden timeline may be nothing more supernatural than a cycle mistaken for a straight line. Yet cycles can conceal uncomfortable truths. A society that speaks of renewal may also repeat inequality, debt, forced labour, and political violence. Order returns, but so do burdens. The tablet system may have served institutions more than individuals. A recurring calendar can organise work efficiently, while also ensuring that obligations never truly disappear. The 12th stage may close one burden only to begin another. You consider this while the observer extinguishes his lamp. The sky remains bright with stars, though the courtyard darkens, and his work will continue tomorrow, then pass to another hand when he grows old. The cycle survives the observer. The record survives the ruler. The number survives its explanation. Perhaps the disturbing date was never meant to point toward a lost age. Perhaps it measured the interval between two returns, large enough to outlast generations and invite misunderstanding. It is possible that the ancient scribes were reconstructing patterns whose beginnings they did not know. They may have inherited totals, formulas, and sequences from earlier schools, preserving them because repeated accuracy gave them authority. A system can survive after its origin is forgotten. The sky offers no first observation. Every watcher begins in the middle. Every archive continues a count already underway. Even the earliest surviving tablet may belong to a tradition older than itself. The numerical cluster now feels less like a date carved into history and more like a wheel seen from the side. Its curve disappears into darkness, leaving only a few visible points. You cannot tell where it begins. You cannot tell where it ends. Perhaps the 12th code was the rule that allowed the wheel to turn again, quietly carrying one age into another without announcing that anything had changed. Your mind drifts across a plane that has not yet learned the shape of a kingdom. No palace dominates the horizon, and no royal name controls the calendar. Small communities rise beside channels, marshes, and shifting riverbanks, each one held together by kinship, labour, ritual, and need. The landscape feels unfinished because water constantly redraws it. Channels split, silt gathers, and entire stretches of ground appear or disappear within a generation. Houses stand on packed earth. Reed structures bend in the wind. Smoke from cooking fires settles low beneath the morning sky. People here do not think of themselves as prehistoric. They know where their ancestors are buried, which paths remain safe during floods, and which plants can survive the salt gathering in tired soil. Their world is full of memory, though none of it has yet entered a formal archive. A woman kneels beside a shallow basin and grinds grain with a heavy stone. Her hands move through a rhythm learned in childhood. Nearby, a child carries reeds toward a roof while two men repair a narrow embankment damaged by rising water. Every action preserves knowledge. The embankment follows a line chosen by earlier generations. The seed is planted at a depth tested through many seasons. The house faces away from the harshest wind because someone once built carelessly and remembered the result. This is history without writing. Archaeologists studying early settlements across southern Mesopotamia have found evidence of long development before the first city-states became powerful. Communities expanded gradually through farming, herding, fishing, craft production, exchange, and increasingly organized water management. No single morning created civilization. It accumulated through countless decisions made by people whose names vanished. A better canal, a stronger storage jar, and a fairer division of labour. Or a successful harvest could change the future more than any speech from a ruler. You walk beside a channel where muddy water reflects the pale sky. Fish move among reeds, and insects gather above the surface. The smell is rich, green, and slightly sour. A boat passes slowly. Its hull is formed from bundled reeds coated with bitumen. Inside are baskets, fish, tools, and perhaps a passenger travelling between settlements. Such vessels connect communities long before formal roads or imperial stations appear. Exchange creates wider memory. A shell arrives from a distant coast, a dark stone comes from mountains beyond the plain. Copper reaches workshops through chains of traders who may never know the material's final destination. Objects travel farther than stories, though stories travel with them. A trader describes a flood seen beyond another river bend. A visitor speaks of a settlement where houses surround a larger communal building. A craft worker carries a new technique for sealing jars or shaping tools. These movements create invisible networks. Researchers from institutions including the University of Chicago and Yale University have studied how early Mesopotamian settlements became increasingly connected. Archaeological evidence suggests that economic specialization, regionalized trade, and communal institutions developed before full royal systems appeared. The old image of civilization beginning suddenly has softened. Instead, a long threshold comes into view. Villages grow larger, shared buildings gain importance, storage becomes organized, labor is coordinated across families, symbols begin carrying information before full writing emerges. A small clay token rests in your palm. It may represent grain, livestock, oil, or another counted item. Such tokens were used in ancient systems of accounting before mature writing. Some were sealed inside clay containers, creating physical records of goods or obligations. The method seems simple, yet it contains a profound chain. A quantity can now exist outside memory. An agreement can be checked. A delivery can be represented by objects that stand in place of the goods themselves. The token is not a word. It is a step toward one. A quirky theory once imagined that every token shape corresponded neatly to one later written sign. The relationship appears more complicated, and scholars continue debating how directly token systems influence writing. The broader pattern remains persuasive. People were externalizing knowledge before they wrote sentences. They were building systems in clay because memory alone could no longer carry everything required by expanding communities. You enter a larger settlement near sunset. The houses crowd more tightly. Footpaths narrow between walls. A central structure rises above nearby roofs, not yet a monumental temple, but clearly more important than an ordinary home. Inside, workers measure grain. Baskets arrive from surrounding fields. Clay ceilings identify resources, quantities, or responsible households, the process is practical, but it also establishes authority. Whoever controls the storehouse controls more than food. They control timing, distribution, debt, and survival during poor seasons. Communal institution may protect the settlement, yet it can also create hierarchy. Human cooperation rarely remains innocent. The storehouse needs managers. Managers need records. Records create specialists. Specialists become valuable because they understand systems others depend upon. You can almost see the first outlines of the offices that will later become powerful. They are not kings or dain, priests, or governors in the full historical sense. They are organizers, custodians, ritual leaders, and negotiators. Their authority grows quietly. No crown is required. The hidden timeline suggested by ancient traditions may reflect this deep period of gradual change. Later scribes knew that their cities did not emerge from emptiness, even if they lacked precise records of the earliest settlements. They inherited ruins, mounds, tools, and local names. A farmer digging a canal could uncover walls from an abandoned community. A builder might find graves beneath a new foundation. A temple tradition could preserve the memory of a sacred place older than the current building. The ground itself argued for forgotten ages. An ancient scribe living among layered settlements may have understood that many communities existed before named kings. He might not know their dates, but he could see their remains and hear stories connected to them. Those stories would change through repetition. A former village leader could become a legendary ruler. A communal building could become the first temple. A severe flood could become the boundary between two worlds. The open scholarly debate concerns how much historical memory can survive through oral tradition. Some researchers believe stories can preserve echoes of real landscapes and disasters across long periods. Others warn that narratives change too deeply to function as reliable records. Both positions deserve patience. A story may preserve location while changing cause. It may preserve fear while losing date. It may remember that something happened without remembering how or why. The tablet's strange chronology could draw upon such transformed memory. Its enormous date may not belong to a measured calendar. It may mark distance from a world understood as older than kingship. Long before recorded history, people already lived within systems. They divided water, managed labour, exchanged goods, maintained rituals, and resolved disputes. Their societies may have lacked royal inscriptions, but they were not without structure. This matters because later texts sometimes describe civilization as a gift delivered suddenly from divine or royal authority. Archaeology reveals a slower truth, built through generations of ordinary intelligence, or the first cities inherited more than land. They inherited method, canal routes, planting traditions, sacred sites, counting practices, and patterns of cooperation may have passed from communities whose identities disappeared. So, the institutions of later kingdoms could rest upon foundations no king created. Perhaps the 12th code belongs to that inheritance. It may preserve a rule so old that its original setting had vanished by the time scribes copied it. A practical instruction could survive inside ritual language after nobody remembered the village, canal, or seasonal crisis that first produced it. The code might therefore be ancient without being supernatural. Its ages would come from repetition. Its mystery would come from survival. You stand on a low mound beneath a sky filled with evening birds. Beneath your feet lie crushed floors, broken jars, cooking ash, and walls built over earlier walls. No inscription names the people below. No list preserves their rulers. Yet their lives remain inside the shape of the land. The canals follow choices they once made. The settlements rise where they found safety. The later cities grow from paths they already opened. A civilization can remember without knowing whom it remembers. Perhaps that is what the impossible date expresses, not a precise year, but an awareness of depth. a recognition that order existed before the people who claim to invent it. The wind moves through the reeds. Somewhere beneath the dark soil, another settlement waits without a name. Its inhabitants never imagined museums, scholars, or arguments about hidden timelines. They simply lived, and the systems they built continued without them. A temple corridor narrows toward a room where the air smells of wax smoke, damp clay, and crushed herbs. You pass beneath a lintel darkened by generations of hands, entering a place where memory is treated as a duty rather than a possession. The people working here are not merely writers, they are keepers of sequence, timing, language, and institutional identity. Their task is to ensure that a ceremony performed today resembles the ceremony performed by those who are already dust. A senior priest sits beside a low table. He does not raise his voice. He recites from memory while a younger assistant follows the words on clay. The rhythm is measured, with pauses placed where gestures, offerings, or movements should occur. The tablet does not contain the whole ritual. It records enough to guide someone already trained. A single phrase may remind the priest when to wash his hands, change garments, open a doorway, or present a bowl of oil. Meaning lives between text and memory. This is why ancient records can seem incomplete to modern readers. The scribe never expected a stranger without training to reconstruct everything. He wrote for a community that understood the missing steps. The archive depends upon living instruction. A formula passes from teacher to student. A melody is heard rather than written. A gesture is corrected by touch. The tablet supports memory, but it does not replace it. You begin to see how knowledge can survive and still become obscure. When a school closes, the signs remain. When a priestly family disappears, the ritual survives only in fragments. When a city changes language, old words may continue as sacred sounds whose meanings are no longer certain. The keepers of memory preserve more than information. They preserve authority. A ceremony performed in the correct sequence confirms that the institution remains connected to its origin. A copied list proves continuity. A calendar maintained without interruption allows the present to claim the weight of the past. The 12th code may have belonged to such a chain. Perhaps it identified the final instruction known only to those who completed a long course of training. Perhaps the number 12 marks seniority, completion, or access to a restricted stagia. Restricted knowledge was not always sinister. Some rites demanded preparation because mistakes were believed to endanger the community. Some administrative records were limited because they concerned property, taxation, or royal decisions. Control over knowledge could still create power. Those who understood the calendars decided when festivals began. Those who read the records knew which families owed labour. Those who guarded temple traditions could interpret unusual events for people who lacked access to the archive. A distant bell does not ring here. Instead, a wooden clapper sounds from the courtyard. The noise signals a change in activity. Assistants rise, gather baskets, and move toward another chamber. You follow them into a storage room. Shelves are arranged by material rather than modern subject. Ritual tablets sit near offering records because both are needed during ceremonies. Astronomical observations rest near calendars because one determines the other. A royal inscription may share a basket with a hymn. The classification makes sense within the institution. It only appears strange when removed from its original setting. Records confirm that ancient archives were often organized according to practical use, scribal training, office, or physical storage. Modern categories can separate texts that once worked together inside the same system. A date on one tablet may depend upon a list stored elsewhere. A ritual phrase may refer to a melody nobody wrote down. A numbered sequence may require a wooden board, a painted diagram, or spoken explanation that has not survived. The missing object could change everything. You notice small clay labels tied to baskets with cord. One bears the name of a temple office, another identifies a series of monthly offerings, a third contains only a number and a damaged sign. 12 appears again. The label may mark the 12th basket, the 12th month, or the 12th group within a larger collection. Its simplicity feels almost disappointing. Yet labels are dangerous when separated from context. A basket falls, tablets scatter. Later workers gather them into the wrong container. Centuries pass. Excavators recover the group and assume it belonged together. An archive can be disturbed long before archaeology begins. A flood may move tablets across rooms. Looters may remove valuable objects and abandon clay. Later builders may reuse old bricks, mixing layers and destroying the original arrangement. The keepers fought against such disorder. They copied fading texts. They replaced broken tablets. They created catalogues, opening lines, and labels to help future readers locate compositions. Some tablets list the first lines of other works. These catalogues act like maps of vanished libraries. They preserve titles for compositions no longer known and reveal that ancient collections once contained far more material than survives today. A quirky detail appears in colophons, the notes added at the end of certain tablets. A scribe might identify himself, name the source copied, state that the work had been checked, or warn readers not to remove the tablet. One warning can feel surprisingly personal. The scribe may ask the finder to return the object to its proper place. The request crosses thousands of years with the weary tone of someone tired of colleagues misplacing important materials. Ancient archives had ordinary frustration. Borrowed tablets vanished. Copies contained errors. Apprentices damaged surfaces. Officials demanded records at inconvenient moments. The guardians of memory were human. They could be diligent, vain, cautious, competitive, or exhausted. One might preserve an old text out of reverence. Another might copy it because a supervisor ordered him to do so. Intentions do not survive clearly. The open scholarly debate concerns whether specialized knowledge was deliberately hidden or simply limited by training. Some researchers emphasize secrecy, initiation, and restricted temple access. Others argue that difficulty itself created exclusion. A person needed years of education, family connections, and institutional support before complex texts became readable. No lock chamber was necessary. Literacy could be the door. A farmer standing outside the temple might know that records existed without knowing their contents. He might hear public recitations, witness ceremonies, and understand the consequences of official decisions. Or the archive remained close and distant at once. This distance allowed stories to grow. A sealed room could become a place of divine writings. A senior priest could become the guardian of dangerous names. A numbered tablet could become the final rule in a cosmic system. Rumour thrives where access narrows. Yet the real knowledge may have been less dramatic and more powerful. It concerned land, time, inheritance, obligation, and the correct performance of authority. A tablet deciding who receives grain can shape lives more directly than any myth. You enter a smaller chamber where one elderly scribe works alone. His eyesight is failing, so a young reader speaks the signs aloud while he listens for errors. The old man knows entire compositions by memora. He interrupts when a word is wrong. He corrects a forgotten phrase and explains that another city uses a different version. His mind is part of the archive. When he dies, some knowledge will disappear even if every tablet survives. His explanations, preferences, and remembered variants exist only within living speech. This fragility gives urgency to copying. The young reader repeats the line carefully. The old man nods. A fresh tablet receives the words, renewing a tradition whose beginning neither person can name. Perhaps the 12th code passed through such a run. Its strange wording may have been understood by the old scholar, and only partly understood by the student. The student preserved the signs, but not the explanation. A later copy would preserve even less. The number 12 remains, the date remains, the surrounding system begins to fade. You hear the soft rasp of reed against clay. Outside, evening gathers all around the temple walls. Workers finish their duties. Cooking fires appear across the city. Inside, memory continues moving from voice to hand. The keepers know that clay can outlast them. They also know that clay alone is never enough. A record survives best when someone remembers how to read it. Without that person, the tablet becomes a closed door. The sign appears simple until you look at it for too long. 3 wedges form the compact shape near the tablet's damaged edge, followed by a shallow impression that may belong to the same word or to the fracture beside it. You feel the uncertainty gathering around something no larger than a fingernail. Ancient signs are not pictures in any straightforward sense. Their oldest forms may have begun with visible objects, but centuries of stylus pressure transformed many shapes into abstract arrangements. A sign once resembling a head or a vessel, foot, or star could become a cluster of wedges whose original image was no longer obvious. One sign can carry several lives. It may represent a complete word in one sentence, then provide only a sound in another. It may act as a silent marker placed before a divine name, city, profession, or material. These markers guide the trained reader, though they are not always spoken aloud. The uncertain sign near the break may belong to such a category. One possible reading marks a divine name. Another marks a wooden object. A third identifies a place. Each option changes the phrase that follows. Yet the visible wedges support all 3 imperfectly. You watch a philologist arrange reference drawings across the table. The same sign appears in tablets from different cities, but its shape shifts subtly. One version has a long vertical wedge, another compresses the form until 2 strokes nearly merge. Time alters writing. A sign from one century may look unfamiliar to a scribe from another. Regional schools also favour different habits. Some preserve archaic forms deliberately, perhaps to display learning or connect a text with respected tradition. The tablet's script contains an awkward mixture. Several signs resemble older forms, while others look current for the period suggested by the clay. This may indicate copying from an ancient source. It may reflect a teacher using traditional spellings. It may also reveal that the text was composed by someone with inconsistent training. A mixed script is not automatically mysterious. Still, it raises questions about intention. Why preserve an old sign when a simpler one would communicate more clearly? Perhaps the older form carries prestige. Perhaps it belongs to a sacred formula that scribes hesitate to modernize. Language can become ceremonial through age. A phrase repeated for centuries may sound powerful, precisely because ordinary people no longer understand it completely. The sound remains familiar, while the meaning grows distant. This happens without deception. Words used in worship, law, and public ceremony often survive after everyday speech changes. Their age gives them authority, even as interpretation becomes dependent upon specialists. The 12th code may contain such language. Its difficult signs could represent an old technical vocabulary rather than a hidden message. A ritual term may describe an object no longer used. A legal phrase may preserve an institution that disappeared centuries earlier. The problem becomes larger when the object itself is unknown. A sign translated as gate may also mean doorway, entrance, opening, or administrative access. A sign translated as seal may refer to the physical cylinder, the impression it creates, the act of closing, or the authority represented by that closure. Translation forces choices. The original word carries a field of meanings. The modern word selects only one portion of that field, often making the result appear more precise than the evidence allows. You hear the scholar read the line aloud. The reconstructed sounds are read as tentative because ancient pronunciation is partly inferred from later spellings, bilingual lists, and related languages. The spoken line is therefore a scholarly approximation rather than a recovered voice. Even so, sound reveals patterns that visual reading can miss. Two terms echo each other. The final word resembles the opening word with one consonant altered. The phrase may contain deliberate wordplay, perhaps linking enclosure with completion. Wordplay resists translation especially well. A phrase can lose its second meaning when moved into another language. A pun may connect legal, ritual, and cosmic ideas through a shared sound that no English equivalent can preserve. The line might therefore seem plain only because its hidden elegance has vanished. Researchers from major universities have long relied upon lexical lists created by ancient scribes themselves. These lists pair difficult words with explanations, alternate signs, or terms from another language. They are invaluable. They are also incomplete. A lexical list may give several equivalents without explaining when each should be used. A rare word can appear once in a list and once in a damaged tablet, leaving scholars to build meaning from almost nothing. The uncertain term beside the 12th entry behaves this way. One ancient list connects it with the enclosure, another suggests completion. A later commentary associates it with silence or restriction. No single definition controls the rest. A fringe interpretation treats the sign as a symbol for a hidden planet. The claim depends upon visual resemblance, and the number 12, linking the tablet with the supposed celestial body unknown to modern astronomy. The idea feels satisfying because it joins scattered mysteries into one answer. Yet resemblance is weak evidence in a script formed from a limited set of wedge shapes. Many unrelated signs look similar, especially when damaged. The tablet offers no secure planetary name. Still, the fringe reading reveals something important about human interpretation. We seek systems, and ambiguous symbols invite us to build them. A mark becomes a star. A number becomes an orbit. A broken line becomes deliberate concealment. The open scholarly debate is not whether imagination should disappear. Interpretation always requires imagination. The real question is how tightly imagination remains bound to grammar, archaeology, parallel texts, and material evidence. Without imagination, the fragment stays mute. Without discipline, it says anything. You turn toward the lower corner, where another sign has been copied in two possible ways. Under one reading, it means to establish. Under another, it means to return. The difference changes the entire sequence. If the rule is established, the text describes an origin. If the rule returns, the text describes a cycle. One wedge decides whether time moves forward or circles back. The wedge is partly missing. No technology can recover clay that no longer exists. Imaging can clarify surfaces, but absence remains absence. The scholar marks both possibilities. A note beside the sign explains that the second reading is less likely, though not impossible. Such phrasing may seem cautious to the point of frustration, yet it protects the text from premature certainty. You study the empty space where the missing wedge should be. It begins to feel like an active part of the inscription. The break determines what cannot be known. Its signet shapes every translation offered around it. Absence has grammar. A lost sign can remove a subject, an action, or a unit of time. A missing line can turn a list into a story, or a story into unrelated fragments. The tablet's most important symbol may therefore be the break itself. A quirky possibility arises from scribal shorthand. Specialists sometimes omitted signs they expected trained readers to supply. A line could appear incomplete to modern eyes while remaining perfectly clear within its original school. The missing meaning may not have been written at all. It may have lived in convention. Perhaps the 12th entry used a compressed formula understood by temple officials. Perhaps its final signs served as cues rather than full explanation. The code would then be inaccessible not because it was hidden, but because the community that completed it has vanished. This is a quieter form of secrecy. No guardian withholds the answer. No scholar fears publication. The key simply no longer exists. You hear the faint scrape of tracing paper moving across the desk. Another possible sign boundary is drawn, separating two wedges previously treated as one word. The sentence changed again. What looked like concealment becomes a place name. What looked like a date becomes a title. The 12th entry may refer to a settlement whose location has never been identified. This possibility opens a forgotten landscape. A city can disappear from maps while remaining inside a list. Rivers move, settlements decline, names change between languages. An ancient place may survive only through scattered mentions that never align securely. The mysterious code might belong to such a city. Its meaning could depend upon a local institution unknown elsewhere. A rule that seems cosmic may have governed a canal gate, storage yard, or seasonal assembly in one vanished community. The explanation becomes smaller. It also becomes more real. You imagine officials using the phrase without mystery. They know the gate, the field, the office, and the appointed date. Nothing requires explanation because everyone present understands the reference. Centuries later, only the signs remain. The place is lost. The institution is lost. The ordinary context has become extraordinary absence. Perhaps this is how hidden truths are often made. Not through deliberate concealment, but through the slow removal of everything that once made them obvious. The sign waits beneath the light. It may mark a god, an object, a place, or a sound. It may preserve an ancient pun, a local title, or a convention no glossary records. You cannot force it to choose. The tablet remains suspended between languages, carrying a message that is still visible and no longer fully readable. A calendar tablet lies beneath the lamplight, its surface divided into narrow columns that resemble channels cut through dry earth. You trace the rows carefully, noticing how numbers, month names, offerings, and observations gather into a system designed to hold the year together. The calendar is not merely a count of days, it is a negotiation between the moon, the sun, the river, the fields, and the demands of institutions. Each part moves according to its own rhythm, while the scribe attempts to make those rhythms agree. The lunar month begins with visibility. A thin crescent must appear low in the evening sky, delicate enough to vanish behind dust or cloud. Observers watch from rooftops and temple courtyards, then report whether the new month can begin. The decision affects everyone. Merchants date contracts according to the month. Farmers organize work around seasons. Priests prepare festivals whose timing carries religious importance. Officials calculate rations and service periods through the same sequence. A missed observation can disturb the order. Clouds may hide the crescent, dust may blur the horizon, conflicting reports may arrive from different places, leaving authorities to decide whether the month has begun or must wait another day. Time becomes administrative judgment. The forgotten calendar suggested by the tablet may have depended upon this fragile process. Its strange date could be correct within a local system, yet impossible within the better-known calendars used by neighbouring cities. Ancient Mesopotamia did not always possess one uniform calendar. Cities could maintain different month names, festival schedules, and methods of adjustment. A date clear within one archive might become confusing when copied elsewhere without explanation. This local variation offers a quiet solution. The disputed numerical line may belong to a provincial calendar, whose structure is poorly preserved. The apparently ancient year could result from applying the wrong sequence of months, rulers, or intercalations. One calendar can distort another. Imagine a scribe copying a text from a city where the year begins near the spring harvest. His own city begins the year at another seasonal point. If he preserves the old month name but changes the year formula, the resulting date may appear contradictory. The error might remain unnoticed. A later copyist could inherit the inconsistency and preserve it faithfully. What began as adaptation becomes tradition, while the original calendar disappears. Records confirm that ancient calendars required periodic correction because the 12 lunar months fall short of a solar year. Without adjustment, seasonal festivals would drift steadily away from planting, harvest, and river conditions. An extra month solved the problem. The insertion could be ordered by a political authority, determined through observation, or preserved through inherited rules. The process was practical, but it also demonstrated control over public timing. Whoever regulates the calendar regulates obligation. A ruler can move a deadline by extending the year. A temple can determine when offerings become due. An official can decide when a labour cycle ends and another begins. The calendar organises more than stars. It organises bodies. You imagine workers waiting near a canal while an overseer reads a date aloud. Their service period is measured by months, whose beginning depends upon a crescent seen by specialists elsewhere. For the Wookiees, time is not abstract. It is the number of mornings before release. It is the quantity of grain received during service. It is the season when they return to their own fields. A calendrical mistake can become hunger. This social weight may explain why a numbered rule appears beside the disputed date. The 12th code could govern the final month of a service cycle, defining when obligations are completed or transferred. The unusual language of enclosure may refer to storage. Grain collected through the year might be sealed when the 12th accounting period ends. The date could mark the closing of a storehouse register rather than a cosmic event. Yet another possibility enters through the month names. Some months were named for festivals, agricultural activities, or ritual objects. A damaged name may look like an ordinary noun when its calendrical function is forgotten. The mysterious phrase may contain such a name. What appears to mean hidden field could identify a month associated with enclosed pasture. What appears to mean silent chamber could refer to a festival period whose title survived only locally. Translation becomes unstable when calendars vanish. A professor studying ancient chronology might compare the fragment with administrative tablets from nearby settlements. Similar month names appear, but their order changes across time. The same month can occupy different seasonal positions. Political unification sometimes encouraged standardization, yet local habits remained stubborn. Communities continued using familiar names even when official systems changed. A quirky detail appears in duplicated months. When an extra month was inserted, it might repeat the name of an existing month, often with a designation showing that it was the second occurrence. A careless copy could omit that designation, making two different months appear identical. Such an omission can shift an entire chronology. If the tablet's date includes a duplicated month whose marker has broken away, the calculated year may be displaced. A sequence that seems impossible could become ordinary once the missing adjustment is restored. The explanation is modest. It lacks forbidden knowledge, vanished rulers, and hidden celestial bodies. Yet modest explanations often survive testing because they require fewer unsupported assumptions. Still, the fragment resists complete simplicity. The disputed date appears beside language suggesting foundation, renewal, or first establishment. Calendar adjustments usually concern recurring years, while foundation language points toward an origin. The combination invites another interpretation. Perhaps the text records a calendrical reform. A ruler, temple, or council may have reorganized month-noun names, corrected seasonal drift, or established a new starting point for counting years. Such reforms can create chronological confusion. Documents written under the new system may refer to earlier events using revised terminology. Later scribes may struggle to convert dates between systems. especially when political changes interrupt continuity. The date no scholar would publish could therefore belong to an obsolete era count. Instead of naming years through royal events, a local institution may have counted from the founding of a temple, the digging of a canal, or the restoration of a city. If the starting point is unknown, the number becomes misleading. A year labelled 400 may not mean 400 years before the tablet. It may mean the fourth year within a cycle, the 40th accounting period, or a ceremonial total repeated during anniversaries. The open scholarly debate concerns whether early calendars were primarily observational or regulated through fixed schemes. Some researchers emphasize direct watching of the moon and seasons. Others find evidence for increasingly calculated systems supported by long records. The two methods may have worked together. Observation corrects prediction. Prediction guides observation. The calendar becomes a conversation between what should happen and what the sky actually does. You stand on a rooftop as the evening grows cooler. Below, the city settles into shadow. Cooking smoke rises between houses. The scent of onions, oil, and warm bread travels through the streets. Several observers face the western horizon. They wait for the crescent. The moon is present, but visibility depends upon atmosphere, elevation, timing, and eyesight. One observer claims to see it. Another remains uncertain. A third says nothing. Their decision will enter a record as though the sky had spoken clearly. Future readers may never know how much hesitation stood behind the date. This is the hidden human layer inside every calendar. A date appears exact, yet its creation may involve judgment, weather, politics, and imperfect vision. The tablet's impossible date may preserve such a decision. Perhaps one city began the month while another waited. Perhaps a festival was delayed because the river rose unexpectedly. Perhaps an official inserted an extra period to protect the harvest schedule. The calendar could bend without breaking. A fringe theory suggests that ancient calendars preserve memory of a lost global system shared across distant civilizations. Supporters point toward recurring groups of 12, lunar divisions, and similar seasonal festivals. Shared observation can produce similar structures without shared origin. Every society watches the same moon. Many discover that 12 lunar cycles nearly fill a solar year. Similar numbers can emerge from the same sky. Yet local systems remain distinct. Month names reflect regional weather, crops, rituals, and political history. The universal heavens pass through deeply local lives. The forgotten calendar may therefore be both familiar and unique. Its broad structure resembles other lunar systems, while its details belong to one vanished community. A month name for reeds might matter beside marshes. A month name for first grain might begin at a different time farther north. A festival tied to river change could lose meaning when copied inland. Context gives time its texture. Without Kutsit, only numbers remain. You return to the calendar tablet as the lamp flame shortens. The columns now seem less like rigid divisions and more like attempts to contain movement. The moon shifts. The seasons drift. Rivers alter their course. Institutions answer with rules, corrections, and repeated observations. They create order, though the order must be repaired constantly. Perhaps the 12th code marks that repair. It may instruct the keeper of the calendar when to close the old count, insert another month, or declare that the year has returned to balance. The strange date would then describe not a hidden age, but a hidden method. Its mystery survives because the method vanished while the number remained. A faint scent of cedar smoke drifts through a harbour where foreign sailors unload timber, copper, dyed cloth, and jars sealed with unfamiliar marks. You stand among people who speak several languages, bargain with gestures, and carry stories across distances no single kingdom controls. Ideas travel beside goods. A merchant may repeat a flood story heard near another coast. A temple envoy may describe a 12-part ceremony practiced in a distant city. A navigator may carry a star name from one language into another, changing its sound but preserving its position in the sky. No border can stop memory completely. Across the ancient world, communities divided time into recurring groups, watched the heavens, preserved foundation traditions, and told stories about ages preceding the present order. These similarities tempt the mind toward one hidden source. The temptation is understandable. A pattern appears in Mesopotamia, then another appears in Egypt, Anatolia, the Eastern Mediterranean, or farther east. The resemblance feels too neat to ignore, especially when numbers, floods, divine assemblies, and cycles of renewal return again and again. Yet resemblance has several causes. People can borrow ideas through trade, migration, conquest, marriage, pilgrimage, and diplomacy. They can also develop similar systems independently because they face similar problems involving seasons, memory, authority, death, and uncertainty. The sky encourages repetition. The moon waxes and wanes everywhere. The sun changes its path through the year. Rivers flood, crops fail, rulers die, and communities rebuild. Different peoples can therefore create similar stories without sharing one original text. Still, exchange across the ancient Near East was extensive. Archaeological evidence confirms that materials and techniques moved through long networks linking Mesopotamia with surrounding regions. Along those routes travelled songs, symbols, rituals, and methods of calculation. A story may change at every step. The name of a god becomes easier to pronounce. A local mountain replaces a distant one. A flood caused by a river overflow becomes a storm sent from the sea. The structure survives while the surface transforms. You listen to sailors speaking beside the harbour wall. One describes a sacred chest carrying life through disaster. Another mentions a ruler who received laws from a divine source. Neither account matches the Sumerian tradition exactly. Yet both share the idea that order must be preserved when ordinary society collapses. Knowledge survives through a chosen person, sealed object, sacred buildings, or carefully repeated formula. The 12th code could fit inside such a pattern. It might represent the final instruction required to carry order from one age into another. Similar ideas appear in many traditions, though their details differ greatly. A cycle ends. A remnant survives. A new order begins. This pattern feels ancient because it reflects repeated human experience. Settlements burn, rivers change course, dynasties disappear, survivors carry fragments of law, ritual, and memory into unfamiliar landscapes. History itself creates myths of continuity. A group leaving a ruined city may preserve only a few songs and rules. Their descendants later describe those fragments as gifts from the earliest age. The older the memory becomes, the more sacred it may appear. Records from Anatolia, the Levant, and Egypt show that scribes translated, adapted, and borrowed compositions across cultural boundaries. Diplomatic courts employed multilingual specialists who could move between languages and writing systems. These scribes were bridges. A tale copied in one palace might be reshaped for another audience. A ritual could acquire local divine names while keeping its sequence. Numbers were especially portable. A system based on a 12 or 60 could travel through administration, trade, astronomy, and measurement. Its practical value encouraged adoption, even when its original meaning changed. A 12-part sequence in one city might become 12 months elsewhere. It might become 12 gates, 12 judges, 12 stars, or 12 ritual stages. The number gains symbolism through repeated usefulness. A quirky fringe claim proposes that every ancient appearance of 12 comes from one lost global civilization. The theory gathers examples from many regions and treats them as pieces of a broken universal code. The evidence does not require that conclusion. 12 is mathematically convenient, easy to divide, and closely connected with lunar counting. Independent societies can favour it for practical reasons. Vedya. Still, the persistence of 12 creates atmosphere. It suggests completion without absolute finality. A year ends and begins again. A sequence reaches its last part, then returns to its first. The number carries the feeling of a closed circle. You move inland with a caravan. The road crosses dry ground marked by old wheel tracks. Bells sound softly from pack animals. Dust settles on wool, leather, and wooden crates. Among the travellers is a scribe carrying letters between courts. His box contains clay tablets wrapped in cloth, each one bearing words meant for rulers who may never meet. Messages pass through interpreters. A phrase of loyalty in one language becomes a phrase of kinship in another. A divine title is replaced with a local equivalent. Meaning survives through adjustment. The same process may shape ancient myths. A story about the establishment of order can cross into another culture and attach itself to different gods, kings, and landscapes. The hidden timeline becomes flexible. One tradition places the first age before a flood, another places it before kingship, another imagines several creations, each ending in failure or renewal. The structures resemble one another, but the details resist complete unity. This resistance matters. Similarity can reveal contact, yet difference reveals local experience. A river society remembers water differently from a mountain society. A coastal community fears the sea in ways an inland farming settlement does not. Shared patterns wear local clothing. Scholars continue debating how far particular stories travelled and how much was reinvented independently. Some emphasize direct borrowing where language and sequence closely match. Others argue that broad themes are too common to prove transmission. The safest answer often lies between extremes. Some elements likely travelled, others likely emerged separately. A tradition can be both borrowed and transformed until its origin becomes impossible to isolate. The 12th code may belong to such a mixed inheritance. Its sequence could preserve a local rule shaped by wider mathematical or ritual ideas. The strange date may also reflect imported chronology. A scribe translating a foreign account could preserve numbers while replacing unfamiliar names. The resulting text might look internally inconsistent because its calendar and vocabulary came from different traditions. A copied date can lose its homeland. Without the original place, a ruler, and calendar, the number becomes detached. Later readers may interpret it within the wrong system. This creates an illusion of impossible antiquity. You enter a palace archive where foreign letters rest beside local records. Some tablets are written in diplomatic language rather than the speech of the court. The choice is practical. A shared scribal language allows rulers across regions to communicate. Yet every writer carries traces of local grammar, spelling, and pronunciation. Scholars can sometimes identify a scribe's background through these small deviations. An error becomes a map. A strange word may reveal where the writer learned. An unusual sign form may point toward a particular school. The disputed tablet's mixed features could therefore indicate travel. Perhaps it was copied by a scribe trained abroad. Perhaps the source arrived from another city. Perhaps the sequence entered Mesopotamia from a neighbouring tradition and was adapted into local language. This possibility broadens the mystery without making it supernatural. The code may not be purely Sumerian. It could be a translated system whose original terms disappeared during adaptation. The 12th entry might remain obscure because the translator preserved a foreign concept without a precise local equivalent. Translation creates ghosts. A word stands where another word once lived. Its shape is present, but its full world is absent. The date might carry the same ghostly quality. It may belong to a foreign ear account whose starting point nobody recorded. You hear distant music from a courtyard. A stringed instrument repeats a melody built from a small group of notes. A visiting musician listens, then answers with a variation from his own land. The two melodies differ, yet they recognize each other. Culture often travels in this way, not as perfect copies, but as conversations. A myth becomes familiar enough to adopt and strange enough to change. Perhaps the tablet belongs to one of these conversations. Its 12-part structure may echo systems known elsewhere, while its vocabulary remains rooted in a local institution. The hidden timeline may therefore be neither global secret nor isolated invention. It may be the residue of many societies exchanging fragments of order across generations. Each culture adds something. Each culture forgets something. By the time the sequence reaches the surviving tablet, its original map has dissolved. You stand again near the harbour as evening darkens the water. Ships rest against their ropes. Foreign voices soften beneath the wind. Across the ancient world, people look upward at the same moon and downward at different soil. They count, remember, rebuild, and tell stories about what existed before them. Some similarities come from contact. Some come from necessity. Some may come from memories too transformed to trace. The 12th code remains among these possibilities, carried like an old story between shores, recognizable in outline and unfamiliar in every detail. You stand inside a courtyard where workers move beneath the measured gaze of temple officials. Baskets of grain pass from shoulder to shoulder. Water jars are carried towards the shaded rooms, and clay tablets record each portion with a calm precision. Human life here is counted, assigned, and fitted into a larger order that claims to be older than any living person. The strange sequence may not describe stars or hidden kingdoms. It may describe people. 12 categories could divide labour, rank, obligation, or service, placing every individual within a system that appears natural because nobody remembers when it began. A man receives barley according to his assigned task. A woman oversees woven cloth prepared for temple use. Children carry smaller loads, while older workers sort reeds beneath an awning. Each person belongs to an arrangement that links survival with obedience. The system can protect. Stored grain may sustain families during poor harvests. Organised canals may prevent fields from drying. Coordinated labour can build walls, clear channels, and repair damage too large for one household. The same system can constrain. A ration can become leverage, a work assignment can become debt, an official record can transform a temporary duty into a permanent expectation. The tablet's language of appointment begins to sound less abstract. To appoint is to place someone where authority believes they belong. The 12th code may define the final human role within a hierarchy of duties. Perhaps the first entries concern official. The middle entries may describe artisans, labourers, herders, and agricultural workers. The final entry could identify those excluded from ordinary categories, including foreigners, captives, dependents, or people attached to sacred service. Such lists existed in many forms. Records confirm that Mesopotamian administrators classified workers by occupation, age, status, and ration level. The surviving tablets reveal a society capable of remarkable organisation, though that organisation often reduced human beings to units of labour. You hear names read aloud. Some receive full identification, others appear only through profession or household connection. A person may be listed as the daughter of someone, the servant of someone, or the worker assigned to a particular estate. Identity becomes relational. The individual exists within a network of obligations, property, family, and institution. Freedom is not always a simple condition. People can hold rights in one setting and face dependency in another. The hidden system may therefore concern belonging. Who is protected by law? Who owes service? Who may inherit land? Who can speak before a court? A code does not merely forbid actions, it defines whose suffering counts, whose testimony matters, and whose labour can be claimed. The 12th category may stand at the edge of recognition. A person placed there might be part of society but denied full participation. The language of enclosure could describe not a chamber, but a social boundary. You feel the rough wooden handle of a grain measure. It is polished by many hands. The official fills it to the rim, levels the surface, and pours the portion into a basket. The measure appears fair because it is consistent, yet fairness depends upon who chose the portion. A standard ration can prevent theft, but it can also preserve inequality with perfect regularity. Order often presents itself as justice because disorder appears more frightening. Ancient texts sometimes describe humanity as created to perform labour for divine powers. In mythic narratives, people may take over burdens once carried by gods, maintaining temples, fields, offerings, and the structures of civilization. These stories are not administrative manuals. Yet they reflect a world where labour and cosmic purpose could be connected. Work becomes more than necessity. It becomes part of the order of creation. The idea offers dignity and danger. A worker can believe his task sustains the world. An institution can use the same belief to make obedience sacred. The 12th code may preserve this tension. Perhaps the final rule explains why human beings occupy the lowest place in a divine hierarchy. Perhaps it assigns them responsibility for maintaining an order established beyond memory. Such an interpretation remains speculative. No surviving line clearly states that humanity was created under a 12-part code, yet Mesopotamian traditions often connect social institutions with divine decisions, presenting kingship, craft, law, and ritual as elements granted from above. Authority becomes ancient by becoming sacred. A ruler does not simply command. He restores an order said to exist before him. A temple does not merely collect grain. It participates in a structure believed to bind heaven, city, and field. You enter a chamber where a legal dispute is being heard. Two families argue over access to water. Their voices remain controlled, though the consequences are severe. The canal reaches one field before another. A blocked channel may enrich one household and ruin another. The officials listen, consult records, and examine earlier agreements. The tablet gives memory to the court. Without it, the strongest speaker might control the story. With it, older decisions can challenge immediate power. Writing can therefore protect the vulnerable. It can also preserve the claims of powerful families across generations. The open scholarly debate concerns how ordinary people experience these institutions. Administrative records reveal structure, but rarely emotion. Legal cases show conflict, though they often survive through official language rather than personal testimony. Historians must infer carefully. A rationalist may indicate dependence, employment, taxation, or support. The same entry can carry different meanings depending upon season, household, and status. The human reality lies beyond the column. You imagine a woman receiving grain for several children. The tablet records quantities, not worry. It does not describe whether the portion was enough, whether one child was ill, or whether the family had other sources of food. The archive counts what institutions need to know. It ignores much of what people feel. This absence matters when interpreting the 12th code. A rule may appear orderly while concealing hardship. A category may seem technical while determining who eats, travels, marries, or remains bound to an estate. A quirky theory claims that humanity was engineered as a labour force by beings remembered as gods. The idea grows from literal readings of ancient creation stories and the modern speculation about advanced visitors. Mainstream archaeology does not support that conclusion. The myths speak through symbolism, ritual, and social imagination rather than scientific description. They reveal how ancient people understood labour, dependence, mortality, and divine authority. Still, the theory touches a genuine discomfort. Human societies often build systems where many serve the needs of a few. A myth describing labour as the reason for human existence can sound disturbingly familiar, even without visitors from another world. Perhaps this is why such stories endure. They express the feeling of being born into obligations nobody chose. The 12th Code may not answer why humanity exists. It may reveal why institutions wanted people to believe they existed. A social order becomes stronger when presented as cosmic necessity. The official lifts another tablet. A worker's name is moved from one group to another. The change requires only a few wedges, yet it alters daily life. The person may now receive a different ration, report to another supervisor, or serve in another district.
Clay can rearrange our future.
You watch the scribe press the final sign. He does not appear cruel. He performs his role within the same system that shapes everyone else. Power often survives through ordinary obedience. The official follows procedure. The scribe records it. The worker accepts the portion. Each person keeps the structure alive. Perhaps the 12th entry names no secret class and no divine species. Perhaps it describes the moment when a person becomes part of the system, registered, assigned, and measured. The date beneath it could mark the beginning of service. It might record the year when a category was created, a population transferred, or a new obligation imposed after political change. An impossible date could then serve ideological purpose. By placing the rule in remote antiquity, officials could make a recent burden appear eternal. A law seems harder to challenge when it is said to come from the First Age. This possibility is unsettling because it requires no hidden technology. Only authority. Authority. You leave the courtyard as the day cools. Workers return to their homes carrying baskets, tools, and the fatigue of repeated duty. The temple walls glow softly in the late light. The system continues because people need it. The system continues because people fear it. The system continues because alternatives are uncertain. Humanity's role may lie somewhere within that tension. People want to build institutions to survive, then discover that those institutions have begun defining what survival means. Perhaps the 12th Code preserves not a command from beyond humanity, but a human decision made ancient through repetition. And perhaps the most hidden truth is that people often become servants of the order they created themselves. The broken edge of the tablet is more eloquent than it first appears. You study the pale fracture where several lines disappear, noticing how smoothly the clay ends in one place and how violently it splinters in another. The damage is not a single event. Some losses came when the tablet fell, while others occurred slowly beneath soil, water, roots, and pressure. A missing line invites certainty from anyone impatient enough to provide it. The eye searches for balance, and the mind prefers completion, yet ancient texts rarely surrender their absences so easily. A sentence may continue into nothing, leaving only enough grammar to reveal that something important once stood there. The surviving text contains a verb without a subject. Another line preserves a number without its unit. A third ends with a sign suggesting warning, permission, or consequence. The reader knows that a statement existed, but cannot determine what action it described or who was expected to perform it. This is not empty space. The missing clay shapes every possible translation. It controls the limits of the argument, directs attention towards surviving signs, and tempts modern interpreters to reconstruct whatever best suits their preferred theory. You feel the pull of that temptation. If the absent subject were a king, the sequence might describe royal law. If it were a priest, the same words could guide ritual procedure. If it referred to a group, the tablet might record social obligations or restrictions. One lost noun changes the world. The fracture crosses the tablet at an angle, removing more from the lower lines than the upper ones. This pattern suggests the object broke after drying, perhaps during storage collapse or later excavation disturbance. The missing fragment may still exist somewhere. It could rest in another museum drawer under an unrelated catalogue number. It might remain beneath the soil of an unexcavated room. It may have dissolved completely through exposure, leaving no surface to recover. Scholars sometimes reunite fragments separated for decades, matching clay colour, thickness, handwriting, and break patterns can reveal that two objects once formed one tablet. Such joins can transform interpretation. A list becomes a letter. A prayer becomes an administrative record. A mysterious title becomes an ordinary name once its missing beginning is restored. The possibility of reunion gives every fragment a suspended future. Yet many pieces will never return. Ancient archives suffered fire, flood, rebuilding, warfare, looting, and neglect. Tablets were discarded when no longer useful. Broken pieces became filling beneath floors or rubble inside walls. The survival of any Easter eggs is accidental. A clay tablet may endure because a building burned and hardened it. Another may vanish because careful storage kept it unfired and vulnerable. Destruction can preserve, while protection can fail. This reversal has a quiet cruelty. The archive available to modern scholars is not the archive ancient people created. It is the small remainder selected by catastrophe, soil chemistry, excavation history, collecting habits, and chance. Whole categories of knowledge may be missing. Wooden writing boards rarely survive. Wax surfaces disappear. Textiles decay. Spoken instruction leaves no direct trace. Painted walls crumble, and reed documents vanish in damp ground. Clay creates the illusion that ancient knowledge was mostly written on clay. It was not. The surviving medium shapes the surviving civilization. Because administrative tablets endure, ancient society can appear obsessed with grain, livestock, and labour. Those concerns were real, but songs, jokes, arguments, private fears, and household teachings may have circulated through materials now lost. The 12th code may have depended upon one of those missing forms. Perhaps a wooden board displayed the entire sequence, while the clay fragment recorded only a summary. Perhaps coloured marks distinguished categories invisible in the surviving monochrome surface. A spoken chant may have supplied the words emitted from the tablet. The text might have been a prompt, not a complete composition. Without the voice that completed it, the surviving signs resemble clues from a system whose main body has disappeared. Records confirm that ancient scribes used multiple media and methods. Though clay dominates the archaeological record, scholars from universities and Wayne such as Yale University and the University of Oxford have examined references to writing boards, labels, and perishable documents mentioned within surviving texts. The lost archive may have been immense. A quirky possibility emerges from palimpsest-like surfaces. Some tablets were softened and reused, with earlier signs smoothed away before new text was written. Traces can remain beneath the later inscription. Under angled light, shallow wedges may appear between deeper signs, creating the ghost of an erased document. Advanced imaging can sometimes distinguish these layers, though interpretation remains difficult. The disputed tablet contains several faint marks beneath its visible text. They may be accidental. They may also belong to an earlier inscription. If so, the 12th code could sit upon a reused administrative tablet, with unrelated numbers lingering beneath it. The impossible date might therefore be a mixture of two texts read as one. This explanation deserves attention. A shallow numeral from the erased layer could overlap a later unit sign, creating a larger value never intended by either scribe. The mystery would arise from material reuse rather than ancient chronology. The open scholarly debate concerns whether the faint impressions form a coherent earlier line. Some researchers see repeated wedge angles suggesting deliberate writing. Others believe the marks result from smoothing tools, fingerprints, and surface damage. The difference cannot be that lipitold through desire. A hidden text is exciting, but excitement does not deepen a wedge. You watch the surface rotate beneath the controlled light. The faint marks appear, vanish, then return from another direction. Their instability makes them difficult to classify. One resembles a place marker. Another could be part of a number. A third looks almost certainly artificial, though it does not connect with the others. The older inscription, if one exists, remains incomplete. Even complete texts can conceal through omission. A royal inscription may describe victory while ignoring famine. A temple account may list offerings without naming the farmers who produced them. A legal judgment may preserve the verdict but not the emotional cost. What was never written can matter more than what survives. Institutions record what they need. They do not record everything they know. A scribe may omit familiar context because his intended readers already understand it. He may avoid sensitive details. He may compress a complicated event into a standard formulae. Silence can be practical, political, or accidental. The 12th code may seem hidden, because the scribe considered its purpose obvious. A phrase such as "according to the old arrangement" might refer to procedures everyone inside the institution knew. To modern readers, the phrase opens nothing. It points toward an unwritten world. You imagine a ceremony performed in a dark courtyard. The tablet contains only the order of offerings, while the gestures, melodies, roots, and spoken explanations pass through trained memory. A stranger reading the clay would understand almost nothing. The insiders would require no further detail. This gap between insider knowledge and surviving text creates mysteries without secrecy. The record is complete for its purpose, yet incomplete for ours. Perhaps the date behaves similarly. It may rely upon a known era, ruler, or local event omitted because no contemporary reader needed explanation. When that shared knowledge disappeared, the number lost its anchor. The result now appears impossible. The lost context may be as simple as counting from a temple restoration rather than a king's reign. It may be as complex as a ceremonial chronology known only to one school. You turn toward a drawer containing unidentified fragments. Each piece bears a catalogue number, measurements, and a brief description. Most remain untranslated. Some are too small. Some contain only one or two signs. Among them could be the missing continuation, though no one recognizes it yet. A future scholar may notice a matching curve or identical handwriting and bring separated pieces together. Until then, every interpretation remains provisional. The fringe imagination prefers deliberate removal. It pictures a scholar hiding the crucial fragment or an ancient priest breaking the tablet to protect forbidden knowledge. There is no evidence for such a story. Yet deliberate destruction did occur in antiquity. Names were erased, monuments damaged, and political memories rewritten. A tablet could be broken intentionally, though proving motive from fracture alone is almost impossible. The break does not confess. It only removes. Perhaps the most unsettling possibility is not that someone hid the answer, but that nobody did. The missing lines may have vanished through ordinary neglect, leaving a puzzle no person intended to create. History loses a meaning quietly. A roof collapses. A shelf breaks. A tablet falls into water. The explanation disappears while the question survives. You look once more at the jagged edge. Beyond it lies no visible continuation, only the shape of absence. The 12th code may have been explained in the next line. The disputed date may have carried a unit in the missing corners. The entire mystery could rest inside clay that no longer exists. Perhaps the hidden truth is not locked away. Perhaps it is gone. And perhaps the silence feels so powerful because the tablet preserves just enough to prove that something once stood there. The museum gallery is closed, but one office remains lit behind a frosted window. You sit across from a researcher who has spent months deciding whether a damaged inscription deserves publication, revision, or silence. On the desk rests a draft filled with cautious verbs, crossed-out claims, and notes demanding further comparison. Publication can appear simple from a distance. A scholar reads a text, forms a conclusion, and shares it with the world. In practice, each step carries risk because a mistaken claim may become public memory long before correction arrives. The disputed sits and see one paragraph. It is introduced as a possible reading, followed by several alternatives and a warning about damage. The researcher reads the sentence aloud, then removes one adjective because it suggests more certainty than the evidence permits. This is how caution becomes visible. A dramatic interpretation would attract attention. It might bring interviews, invitations, funding, and an audience far beyond the usual circle of specialists. Yet attention can also trap a scholar inside a claim that later evidence weakens. Reputation is not the only concern. An exaggerated reading can distort how the public understands an entire civilization. Sumerian history may become reduced to forbidden codes, vanished beings, and secret calendars, while genuine achievements disappear beneath louder stories. The real record is already extraordinary. Cities developed complex institutions, scribes preserved literature, mathematicians refined calculation, and communities managed unstable landscapes through generations of labour. None of this requires an impossible date to deserve wonder. Still, silence creates suspicion. When specialists decline to endorse a dramatic claim, some listeners assume fear, censorship, or pressure. The absence of publication begins to look like evidence by itself. That reasoning is seductive. A claim appears true because experts reject it. Lack of evidence becomes proof that evidence was hidden. Every correction strengthens the story because disagreement is interpreted as confirmation. The system closes around itself. You watch the researcher place two photographs beside the draft. One image was taken under direct light. The other uses illumination from the side. The disputed wedge appears strong in one image and weak in the other. A reader shown only the first photograph might feel certain. A reader shown both would understand why the sign remains doubtful. Selection shapes belief. A fringe writer can present the most suggestive image, the most exciting translation, and the largest possible number. Each choice may contain a small piece of truth, yet the combination creates a conclusion the full evidence does not support. A scholar must resist that arrangement. This resistance can feel dull. It asks the reader to consider damaged grammar, uncertain units, local calendars, scribal habits, and alternative genres. Mystery becomes slower because each possibility remains conditional. Slow thinking rarely spreads quickly. A sensational sentence travels through conversation, film, and social media with almost no friction. A careful correction requires context, patience, and trust. The dramatic version wins the first race. It may continue winning even after specialists demonstrate serious problems. People remember the forbidden date, but forget the missing unit. This imbalance gives science its weight. A scholar may hesitate because speaking too early risks strengthening the very story she hopes to correct. Yet refusing to speak allows others to claim that she knows more than she admits. There is no perfect response. The researcher begins outlining the evidence in layers. Secure signs come first, probable readings follow, doubtful restorations appear last, separated clearly from conclusions. This method does not eliminate disagreement. It makes disagreement honest. Records confirm that responsible editions of ancient texts had to often distinguish visible signs from restored signs and uncertain readings. Such conventions allow other specialists to see where evidence ends and reconstruction begins. To a general reader, these marks may appear technical. Their purpose is ethical. They prevent the translator from hiding uncertainty inside smooth prose. A polished sentence can create the illusion that every word survives clearly, though half the line may depend upon reconstruction. The tablet does not speak in polished English. It speaks through damage, convention, comparison, and probability. The researcher decides to include the largest numerical reading in a footnote rather than the main interpretation. Not because the number is forbidden, but because it depends upon several uncertain choices made at once. Each choice is possible. Their combination is weak. A quirky problem appears when reporters simplify this decision. A footnote becomes evidence that the scholar buried the truth. Placement is mistaken for suppression, though academic writing often uses notes to preserve possibilities without giving them equal weight. The misunderstanding grows easily. Most people do not see the years of comparison behind one cautious sentence. They see only the final page, where the exciting idea occupies less space than expected. The open scholarly debate concerns how much speculation belongs in formal publication. Some researchers prefer recording every plausible reading, allowing future evidence to decide. Others worry that weak possibilities acquire false legitimacy once printed under an academic name. Both concerns are valid. Omitting a possibility can erase useful thought, including it can create a legend. You hear the quiet tap of rain against the window. The sound softens the room while the researcher returns to the damaged line. She asks a narrow question. What can this fragment establish without depending upon its most uncertain signs? The answer is smaller than the legend. The tablet preserves a numbered sequence. The 12th item changes formula, a numerical cluster follows. The text may concern a rule, ritual, allocation, or calendar. That is all. The impossible date requires restoration of a damaged unit, selection of the largest scale, and an assumption that the number represents chronological years. None is impossible. None is secure. The honest conclusion may therefore disappoint anyone seeking revelation. Yet disappointment can protect the past from being remade into modern fantasy. This protection matters because ancient people cannot correct us. Their languages survive imperfectly. Their institutions disappeared. Their names often remain only through records written by officials. Modern readers hold enormous power over them. A careless interpretation can turn scribes into prophets, rituals into machines, and mythic beings into visitors from another world. The past becomes a mirror for present desires. You sense the responsibility in the room. The researcher is not defending a lifeless chronology. She is defending the right of ancient people to remain complex, ordinary, strange, and human. A tablet about grain deserves to remain about grain. A ritual deserves to remain ritual. A damaged phrase deserves uncertainty when certainty cannot be earned. This restraint does not remove mystery. It deepens it. A mystery protected from easy answers can remain open longer. It can invite new fragments, better imaging, improved grammar, and fresh comparison without demanding loyalty to one dramatic conclusion. Perhaps the unpublished date survives precisely because nobody has yet found the language to present it responsibly. The researcher may fear that readers will separate the number from every warning surrounding it. A tentative possibility will become a statement. A statement will become evidence. Evidence will become proof of concealment. The transformation requires only repetition. You imagine the date spoken without context. It sounds ancient enough to disturb the known timeline. It sounds precise enough to command belief. It sounds suppressed enough to create suspicion. Its power comes from what has been removed. The missing unit, the damaged grammar, the uncertain genre, the absent parallel. Without these burdens, the number appears clean. Truth rarely appears so clean. The researcher saves the draft and closes the folder. Publication may still happen, but the language will remain careful. The date will not be announced as a discovery. It will be offered as a possibility requiring stronger evidence. Outside the office, rain darkens the pavement, reflections gather beneath streetlights, trembling whenever water moves across the grounds. Silence fills the building. It no longer feels feels empty. It contains restraint, responsibility, fear of error, and respect for what cannot yet be known. It also contains ambition, rivalry, caution, and the ordinary human wish not to be humiliated. Scholars are not beyond weakness. Neither are their critics. Perhaps the date remains unpublished because institutions resist uncomfortable evidence. It is possible, though such a claim would require proof. Perhaps it remains unpublished because the reading is fragile. Perhaps both forces can exist in different cases, making every silence difficult to interpret. The tablet offers no answer about motive. It cannot reveal whether hesitation comes from integrity, fear, or simple lack of confidence. You are left with the weight of that uncertainty. A hidden truth may be waiting. A mistake may be waiting beside it. The only honest path passes slowly between them, carrying the burden of not knowing and refusing to pretend otherwise. Cold stone rises beneath your palm as you enter a sanctuary aligned toward the first light of morning. The doorway frames a narrow portion of the horizon, where the sun appears during one particular season and touches a carved platform deep inside the building. The effect feels intentional. Ancient builders often placed temples, gates, and ceremonial spaces in relation to landscape, direction, water, and sky. Now, their choices could serve practical needs, symbolic meaning, or both at once. You move slowly through the chamber. The floor slopes almost imperceptibly. A drainage channel runs beneath one wall. Small sockets in the stone suggest that wooden screens, poles, or ritual objects once stood nearby. Architecture preserves actions without explaining them. A doorway may guide sunlight. It may also control movement, separate social ranks, or frame a sacred image. The same design can perform several functions without contradiction. The 12th code may have belonged to a built environment. Its numbered entries could describe stages of approach through gates, courts, stairways, and inner rooms. The final instruction might concern the most restricted space, where only selected officials could enter. This possibility gives physical meaning to enclosure. The word interpreted as concealment may refer to a chamber hidden from public view. The date may identify the day when sunlight is shadowed or a celestial body reaches a specific position within the structure. You watch dawn move across the floor. The first beam touches a shallow groove and then advances toward a stone basin. Dust glitters in the light, making the invisible path of the sun suddenly visible. The moment lasts only briefly. A visitor arriving an hour later would notice nothing unusual. Without repeated observation, the alignment could pass unnoticed for generations. This is why architectural patterns are difficult to interpret. Buildings shift. Walls collapse. Doorways are rebuilt. Foundations settle into uneven ground. A line that appears perhaps is today may result from restoration rather than original intention. A true alignment may also be lost when one small architectural element disappears. Records confirm that Mesopotamian builders paid careful attention to orientation, foundation rituals, and repeated reconstruction. Temples were often rebuilt on older sacred sites, preserving continuity even as plans changed. A new wall could follow an ancient line. A new ruler might claim to restore a plan established by a legendary predecessor. The building then becomes a layered object, carrying several periods within one footprint. The hidden system may lie within those layers. 12 foundation deposits could mark 12 stages of construction, 12 gates might organize access, 12 symbolic divisions could connect the structure with months, divine groups, or ritual stations. Yet numbers found in architecture require caution. A building may contain 12 rooms because space, materials, and function demanded that arrangement. Later observers may assign symbolism that the builders never intended. Pattern recognition can become too generous. Count enough doors, niches, columns, and corners, and almost any meaningful number may eventually appear. The open scholarly debate concerns intention. Did builders create numerical symbolism deliberately, or do modern researchers select features that support preferred patterns? The answer depends upon inscriptions, repeated designs, archaeological context, and whether the same arrangement appears across related structures. One building rarely proves a system. Several buildings might. You leave the sanctuary and walk toward a stepped temple platform rising above the surrounding city. Its walls catch the morning heat, while workers climb ramps carrying baskets of mud brick. The structure dominates the horizon. It is not merely a place of worship, it is a statement about order, labour, and the relationship between city and sky. From the upper terrace, officials can observe fields, canals, smoke, and distant roads. The height creates visibility, authority, and separation. A temple tower also changes how people experience the heavens. Stars rise against its edges, the moon appears beside its upper platform, shadows fall across courtyards according to the season. The building becomes a fixed instrument within a moving sky. No brass mechanism is required. Stone, mud brick, and repeated observation can create a calendar also visible through light and shadows. A narrow stairway contains 12 landings. The number may be accidental. It may also divide ritual ascent into measured stages, giving each pause a name, offering, or recitation. You imagine a procession moving upward before dawn. Incense burns in covered bowls, sandals scrape against steps. A singer begins a low chant, and each landing marks one part of the ceremony. At the final platform, the horizon open. The 12th stage does not reveal a secret machine. It reveals perspective. From below, the city appears enclosed by walls and streets. From above, canals, fields, and distant water join into one system. The ritual may teach that human order reflects a larger pattern. This lesson could be political. A ruler standing at the summit appears closer to the sky and distant from ordinary life. Architecture turns hierarchy into experience. The body learns rank by climbing. The body learns exclusion by stopping at a gate. The body learns sacred distance through walls. The 12th code may therefore be a sequence of permitted movement. The first instruction allows entry into an outer court. Later rules govern washing, clothing, offerings, and silence. The final rule restricts access according to date, office, or celestial condition. A date placed beside architecture becomes a key. Not a key made of metal, but a moment. The chamber opens when the season arrives. The ceremony begins when a star appears. The inner gate remains closed until the correct month. Time controls space. A quirky theory claims that ancient temples functioned as advanced energy devices or observatories built with lost technology. Such ideas often rely upon unusual stonework, orientation, and acoustics. The evidence supports sophisticated planning. It does not require unknown machines. Ancient builders understood weight, drainage, geometry, materials, and human movement through experience accumulated across generations. Their achievement becomes greater, not smaller, when recognized as human knowledge. Still, some architectural choices remain difficult to explain. A corridor may amplify footsteps. A chamber may hold sound unusually on this well. A shaft may direct air or light toward a specific point. These effects can be deliberate even when their exact purpose is uncertain. You enter a smaller room where the ceiling lowers. Your breathing sounds louder. A whisper travels along the wall, returning from a corner with surprising clarity. A priest speaking here could seem close even when hidden from view. Sound creates presence. A ritual voice might emerge from darkness, while the speaker remains behind a screen. To participants, The experience could feel supernatural without any deception in the modern sense. Sacred architecture shapes perception. The scent of incense, restricted light, repeated music, cold stone, and controlled movement combine into an environment where ordinary awareness changes. The 12th code may guide that transformation. Each stage could alter the senses. One court introduces heat. Another introduces water. A dark corridor removes vision. A final chamber amplifies sound. The code would then be less like law and more like choreography. Its purpose would be experienced through the body rather than explained through text. You consider the numerical date again. Perhaps it marks the day when sunlight enters the deepest room. A damaged month name, an uncertain number, could describe a seasonal event rather than ancient chronology. The impossible date may result from reading spatial measurement as time. A number beside a foundation line could indicate brick courses, cubits, or steps. Without the unit, the total becomes vulnerable to misinterpretation. A measured distance can masquerade as years. This possibility links the tablet with architecture directly. The 12th instruction may specify where to place a threshold, seal a chamber, or align a foundation deposit. The mysterious number may belong to construction. A council decree proves that ancient institutions could regulate rebuilding, labour, and sacred property carefully. Foundation inscriptions also show that rulers presented construction as restoration of established order. The building becomes memory made solid. A tablet can be lost. A wall remains visible. Yet walls also lie. Later rulers rebuild them, move entrances, add platforms, and claim ancient authority. What appears original may be a careful imitation created centuries later. Architecture remembers selectively. You stand in a courtyard where several building phases overlap beneath your feet. One foundation belongs to an early shrine, another cuts through it. A later wall follows neither line exactly. The sacred place survives. Its shape changes repeatedly. The hidden system may therefore be reconstructed from fragments of space as well as fragments of clay. A doorway here, a deposit there, a repeated number, a seasonal alignment, and a damaged instruction begin to suggest order. But suggestion is not proof. Perhaps the pattern is real. Perhaps modern eyes are connecting unrelated remains. The stones do not answer. The sun continues moving across the courtyard, leaving the carved platform in shadow. The brief alignment has ended, and the chamber returns to ordinary dimness. You understand how knowledge can disappear without destruction. A building survives, but nobody remembers where to stand. A date survives, but nobody remembers which event to watch. A code survives, but nobody remembers which doorway it governed. The system remains present in stone and sky, yet its meaning has slipped beyond reach. The boundary between fact and legend is not a wall, it is a shoreline, shifting under the pressure of memory, politics, fear, kuku, and hope. You stand where written records, excavated objects, and inherited stories meet, and none of them speaks with complete authority. A legend may preserve no exact date. It may still preserve a place. A factual record may preserve a date precisely. It may still conceal motive, suffering, and doubt. Ancient history often survives through this uneven exchange. Archaeology offers walls, tools, bones, seals, and broken tablets. Literature offers voices, images, warnings, and explanations shaped by generations of retelling. Each source reveals something. Each source distorts something. The Sumerian world contains kings who can be placed within historical settings, and rulers whose reigns stretch beyond ordinary possibility. It contains cities confirmed by excavation and stories that place those cities inside divine plans. The mixture is not careless. Ancient writers did not always divide history, religion, poetry, and political memory into separate categories. A king could be a human ruler, or sacred representative, legendary ancestor, and literary symbol within the same tradition. Modern readers prefer clean labels: historical, mythological, symbolic. Invented, the ancient text may refuse them all. The 12th code gains power because it stands near this boundary. Its numbered structure feels administrative, while its possible language of origin, enclosure, and appointed order feels ceremonial. The mysterious date sounds chronological. Its scale may be legendary. This combination encourages both caution and fascination. A purely mythical text can be studied as mythology. A clear administrative account can be studied as record. A fragment containing both invites endless interpretation. Records confirm that ancient Mesopotamian literature often drew upon real cities, political institutions, environmental danger, and social relationships. These works were not simple reports, yet they were rooted in recognizable human experience. A flood story may preserve memories of destructive water events. It may also explore mortality, divine anger, kingship, and the limits of human knowledge. The historical and symbolic levels can exist together without cancelling each other. You walk through a settlement mound cut by excavation trenches. Distinct layers appear along the walls, each one marking flaws, fires, rebuilding, and abandonment. The layers are factual. Their stories are not automatic. A burned level proves this intense heat affected buildings. It does not reveal whether the cause was invasion, accident, ritual destruction, or later disturbance without further evidence. Interpretation enters immediately. A legend describing a city destroyed by divine judgment may resemble the burned layer. The resemblance attracts attention, but resemblance alone cannot identify the event. The date may differ. The location may be uncertain. The literary story may have absorbed memories from several disasters. Still, the legend should not be dismissed simply because it is not a report. It may preserve how communities understood catastrophe, responsibility, and survival. Meaning is also evidence. A society's fears can be historical even when its stories are not literal. The tablet's strange sequence may therefore describe no actual code, yet still reveal how ancient scribes imagined hidden order. A system of 12 could represent completeness, cosmic structure, or institutional harmony. The date could mark distance rather than time. It may tell the reader that the order belongs to an age beyond challenge, an origin placed so far away that no witness can question it. Legend protects authority through remoteness. A law created yesterday can be debated. A law established before memory feels permanent. Rulers and institutions have often benefited from this transformation. A recent practice gains sacred weight when linked with legendary founders or the divine command. The process need not involve deliberate fraud. People can believe the tradition they inherit. A scribe may copy a foundation account with genuine reverence, never imagining that future readers will ask whether every detail is historically measurable. Truth can mean continuities. It can mean moral order. It can mean belonging. The modern historical method asks different questions. When was the text written? What physical evidence supports it? Which parts belong to later editing? How does the language compare with other documents? These questions are essential, but they do not capture every kind of meaning the ancient text carried. You hear two voices within the fragment. One belongs to administration. It counts, classifies, and fixes obligations. The other belongs to memory. It reaches toward origins, sacred authority, and time beyond ordinary reckoning. Perhaps the 12th code is where these voices meet. A practical rule may have been wrapped in legend to protect its status. A mythical sequence may have been arranged like administration because scribes understood order through lists and categories. The form of bureaucracy can enter mythology. The language of mythology can enter bureaucracy. This exchange makes the text difficult to classify, but also deeply human. A quirky fringe tradition treats the disputed data as proof that established history is incomplete in a dramatic way. It imagines ancient scribes preserving knowledge of a civilization erased from archaeology. The possibility is attractive because archaeology is incomplete. Many sites remain buried. Some lie beneath modern settlements, river sediment, or water. Important discoveries can still alter historical understanding. Yet incompleteness does not validate every proposal. A gap in knowledge is not evidence for one preferred answer. It is only a gap. Mainstream history also changes. New excavations revise settlement dates. Improved analysis identifies trade routes, diets, migrations, and environmental shifts previously unseen. Scholarly caution does not mean that history is fixed. It means change should follow evidence. The open debate concerns how seriously legendary chronology should be treated when material evidence is limited. Some scholars search for historical cause within ancient stories. Others emphasize literary purpose and warn against forcing narratives into archaeological timelines. A careful approach allows several levels. A legendary king may reflect memories of one ruler, several rulers, or an entire style of kingship. A vast date may preserve symbolic mathematics, distorted chronology, or ceremonial time. The answers may differ from one text to another. You enter a library where translations from different periods stand beside each other. An older edition uses confident language. A newer edition replaces several words with uncertain alternatives, so the tablet has not changed. The questions have early readers sometimes searched for familiar religious parallels. Later scholars focused more heavily upon grammar, social institutions, and archaeological context. Future readers will ask other questions. Every generation sees the fragment through its own concerns. A period fascinated by lost civilizations notices hidden timelines. A period concerned with bureaucracy notices classification. A period studying inequality notices labour and exclusion. Interpretation reveals the reader as well as the text. This does not make all readings equal. Evidence still limits possibility. Grammar matters. Material context matters. Parallel texts matter. But complete neutrality remains difficult because every scholar chooses which questions deserve attention. You feel the cold edge of a display case beneath your hand. Inside rests an ordinary accounting tablet beside a literary fragment. One records barley's. The other describes divine decisions. Their clay looks nearly identical. The difference lies in signs, context, and the worlds readers rebuild around them. Perhaps the 12th code belongs to neither category completely. It may be an administrative fragment carrying legendary language, or a literary sequence borrowing the appearance of official order. The uncertainty should not be treated as failure. It may be the most accurate understanding available. Fact and legend are not always enemies. Legend can carry memory. Fact can become legend through repetition. A ruler confirmed by inscriptions may later receive impossible deeds. A real flood may grow into a boundary between human ages. A practical calendar may become a cosmic system when its original use is forgotten. The strange date could have travelled through such transformation. It may have begun as a count, become a symbol, then return to modern readers as apparent chronology. The path is impossible to reconstruct fully, yet the transformation itself feels plausible. You leave the library as evening gathers over the city. Street sounds soften beyond the windows, and the tablet remains beneath controlled light. Its signs are real, its interpretations are layered. Its silence is bemin. Perhaps the hidden truth is not one forgotten event waiting to be recovered. Perhaps it is the recognition that human memory changes shape while trying to survive. Facts endure through objects. Legends endure through meaning. Between them, the past remains alive, uncertain, and unwilling to become only one thing. The fragment now appears less like a single message and more like one surviving piece from a larger arrangement. You study its edges, spacing, and repeated formulas, sensing that the tablet may once have belonged to a series whose other parts are missing. A number's sequence rarely exists alone. It may continue across several tablets, divide knowledge into separate groups, or summarize material preserved elsewhere in greater detail. The 12th entry could be the conclusion of one series and the beginning of another. This possibility changes the scale of the mystery. The code may not be one rule. It may be one layer within a system. Ancient scribes created series containing dozens of tablets. Each tablet could carry its own position, opening line, and closing note. A trained reader knew how the parts belonged together. When only one piece survives, the structure becomes almost invisible. You imagine shelves holding 11 related tablets, each one devoted to a different category. One may concern land, another may concern offerings, others may organize celestial observations, labor duties, ritual times, or legal decisions. The 12th tablet could unite them. Its altered formula may exist because its function is different. Instead of adding another category, it may explain how the categories interact. A final tablet often changes tone. Lists become summaries. Instructions become warnings. Names become totals. The strange date may appear there because the system required a point of origin, renewal, or completion. Records confirm that ancient scholars organized knowledge through numbered series and repeated textual structures. Some compositions survive only through fragments scattered across many collections, making reconstruction dependent upon small clues. A repeated opening can identify a series. A matching colophon can link distant fragments. A shared order of signs can reveal that two tablets once followed one another. The 12th code may wait inside such a broken sequence. A museum drawer in one country could hold the 9th part. A private collection might contain the 5th. Another fragment may remain unpublished because its signs seem too ordinary to attract attention. The system may be divided across the world. This dispersion is not ancient design. Excavations, trade, collecting, war, and museum exchange often separated tablets from their original groups. Objects found near each other could travel to different institutions and receive unrelated catalogue numbers. A sequence can disappear through classification. Each fragment becomes an individual object. Its neighbours become unknown. You picture researchers comparing photographs across collections. Handwriting, clay composition, line spacing, and repeated formulas begin forming connections. One tablet mentions the 1st division, another mentions the 7th. A damaged piece preserves the phrase of completion but no number. The network grows slowly. No single fragment proves the whole structure. Together, they begin suggesting a forgotten system, organized through repeated categories and final consolidation. The number 12 may be structural rather than symbolic. A list can contain 12 parts because just 12 subjects were required, yet structure often produces symbolism later. Once a complete series becomes associated with 12, the number may acquire authority. Later scribes may preserve the form even when categories change. The system begins serving tradition. A new subject is forced into an old position. Two categories are combined. An outdated rule remains because removing it would disturb the inherited total. Human institutions often protect a form after purpose fade, as the 12th code may therefore contain material from several periods. Its first lines could belong to an early arrangement, while later additions adapt the system to new conditions. The final tablet becomes a place where revisions gather. This would explain mixed vocabulary, uneven spacing, and conflicting numerical language. The fragment may not represent one moment of composition. It may preserve centuries of adjustment. A quirky possibility appears in ancient commentary traditions. Later scholars sometimes wrote explanations for old texts, clarifying rare terms, correcting older readings, or preserving alternative interpretations. A commentary can look like part of the original system when context disappears. Perhaps the disputed date belongs to a scholarly note. A scribe may have calculated when an earlier rule was believed to originate. That calculation could appear beside the text, then enter a later copy as though it belonged to the code itself. A comment becomes scripture through copying. This process requires no conspiracy. A narrow margin disappears when a new tablet changes format. The copyist places notes beneath the main text. A later reader assumes everything belongs together. Textual layers merge. The impossible date may therefore reflect later speculation rather than ancient memory. A scholar from one period could have projected the code backward using king lists, temple genealogies, or ritual cycles. His calculation might be respected, debated, and copied for centuries. By the time the surviving fragment was written, the date already looked ancient. The open scholarly debate concerns how confidently textual layers can be separated. Differences in grammar, sign form, and vocabulary may indicate later addition. They may also reflect one scribe using varied sources. A layered text can be reconstructed only through comparison with parallel copies, and those copies may be incomplete or absent. The system remains half visible. You enter an imagined scribal workshop where several tablets lie open at once. One contains the old sequence, another preserves a commentary, a third holds calculations. The copyist moves among them. He does not distinguish source and explanation with modern punctuation. He trusts layout, spacing, and professional convention to guide trained readers. Those conventions disappear when the copy is damaged. A horizontal line may once separate the code from commentary. A missing corner may have contained the label identifying the numerical passage as explanation. Without that corner, the texts merge. The date becomes part of the mystery. A larger system also changes the meaning of concealment. The disputed phrase may instruct scribes to keep the complete series together, restrict copying, or store the final tablets separately. Such practices could protect specialized knowledge. They could also protect fragile organization. A series scattered across the rooms becomes useless. A final tablet containing indexes, totals, or interpretive keys may be stored carefully because losing it would make the rest harder to understand. The 12th code may have functioned as such a key. It might list relationships among the other 11 divisions. It might explain which calendar governed them. It might provide the numerical rule required to convert one category into another. The surviving fragment contains repeated references to appointment, enclosure, and establishment. These terms fit a system concerned with assigning positions and closing cycles. Perhaps each division belongs to a particular month, office, region, or celestial station. The final rule could govern transition between all of them. The structure begins to resemble a wheel with 12 marked points. Each point has its own function, while the final instruction maintains the motion, yet the evidence remains thin. A complete system can be reconstructed too easily when fragments are ambiguous. Modern readers may connect unrelated text because the pattern feels satisfying. The desire for totality becomes a drawbar. You notice how the phrase larger system offers comfort. It promises that every strange sign has a place, every number a purpose, and every gap a missing component. Reality may be less orderly. The tablet could combine unrelated tradition. The sequence could end at 12 without deeper design. The date could be an error. Still, ancient scribes valued classification. They arranged gods, cities, professions, stones, plants, omens, and words into ordered lists. A hidden system is therefore not impossible. It is only unproven. The fragment's most persuasive feature is its regularity. Repeated grammar suggests deliberate structure. The altered 12th entry suggests closure, transition, or exception. This pattern deserves explanation. A lost series remains one possibility among several. You imagine the missing components resting beneath collapsed walls. Their surfaces may carry titles, diagrams, or clear units that would reduce the mystery instantly. One discovery could reveal the sequence as a calendar. Another could identify it as temple administration. A third might show that the number 12 refers only to storage rooms. The system waits for evidence. Perhaps no complete copy survived. Perhaps the fragment is all that remains of a tradition once obvious to hundreds of trained readers. The larger structure may be gone beyond recovery. You stand before the shelf where the tablet rests alone. Its isolation is modern, but it also feels symbolic. A single piece has outlived its companions. It preserves order without explanation. It carries a final number without revealing the whole count. The 12th code may not be the secret itself. It may be the surviving index to secrets lost elsewhere. Perhaps that the hidden truth lies not within one line, but across a vanished network of tablets, rooms, teachers, calendars, and spoken instructions. The fragment points outward. Every broken edge suggests continuation. Every repeated formula suggests missing partners. The unfinished chronicle remains larger than the clay that survived, and its absent structure continues shaping every meaning that can still be imagined. The date returns beneath a softer light, stripped of rumour, urgency, and the need to become extraordinary. You sit with the surviving marks as though meeting them for the first time, allowing each wedge to remain modest until the evidence gives it greater weight. The first cluster is clear enough to count, but not clear enough to scale. A small numerical group survives beside a damaged sign whose function could determine whether the value represents days, months, years, measures, or repeated cycles. This uncertainty changes everything. A number without its unit is not a date. It's only quantity waiting for context. The dramatic chronology emerges only when several uncertain choices are placed together and treated as though each were secure. You begin separating those choices carefully. The first decision concerns the damaged sign near the numerical group. One reading treats it as a marker of time. Another identifies it as a measure used for grain or land. A third interpretation considers it part of a place name. The second decision concerns scale. Because ancient Mesopotamian numerical writing relied upon place value and context, the same visible arrangement can carry several magnitudes. The largest possible value creates the oldest chronology, but the smallest value may fit the physical format more naturally. The third decision concerns grammar. The phrase connected with the number may describe when something happened. It may also describe how long something lasted, how often something returned, or how much material was assigned. Chronology is only one path. The date no scholar would publish begins losing its sharp outline. It becomes a family of calculations rather than one forbidden answer, with each calculation depending upon assumptions that deserve separate examination. You watch the possibilities written across a page. One reading places the entry within a known royal period. Another treats the number as a ceremonial duration. A third understands it as a mathematical interval connected with recurring observation. The legendary date remains on the page. It is not erased. It is simply no longer privileged. This change may feel disappointing, yet it reveals a deeper mystery. Why did the largest reading seem so convincing before every assumption was made visible? Part of the answer lies in precision. A vast number feels authoritative because it appears exact. The mind tends to trust a date more readily than a vague phrase, even when the date rests upon damaged signs. Another part lies in skill. An ordinary quantity of grain rarely promises a hidden age. A chronology reaching beyond cities offers a doorway into lost worlds, and the imagination steps through quickly. The tablet did not create that desire. The reader brought it. This does not mean the oldest reading must be false. It means desire cannot serve as evidence, no matter how elegantly the interpretation fits a preferred story. Records confirm that chronological reconstruction in Mesopotamia often depends upon king lists, year names, astronomical references, administrative sequences, and connections between excavated layers. No single damaged number can overturn that structure responsibly without strong supporting evidence. The accepted timeline is not perfect. Early periods remain debated. Some reigns are uncertain. Regional chronologies do not always align cleanly. Yet a revised history requires several independent lines of support, not one fragile numerical cluster. You examine the physical tablet again. The line containing the supposed date is slightly narrower than those above it. The scribe may have compressed the final words because space was running out. This ordinary pressure could explain several unusual features. Signs overlap. A unit marker becomes shallow. Spacing appears deliberate when it may simply reflect haste. The shape of the tablet influences the shape of the mystery. A quirky possibility emerges from the tablet's orientation. Some ancient texts were turned during writing, allowing later material to continue along another edge or surface. If the fragment was rotated, the disputed group might belong to a separate column. The apparent connection between the 12th entry and the number could therefore be accidental. Damage may have removed the dividing line, causing two unrelated passages to appear continuous. The thought is almost annoyingly practical. A hidden chronology may dissolve because the tablet was held differently. Still, the orientation cannot be proven from the surviving piece alone. The back surface preserves faint impressions, but they do not reveal whether another column once continued around the edge. The open scholarly debate narrows toward layout. Does the numerical cluster complete the 12th entry, or begin a new section? Does the horizontal mark divide subject matter, or merely guide writing? The difference is decisive. If the number begins a new section, the phrase called the 12th code may have no date attached to it at all. The legend would then be built from proximity. Two fragments of information sit near each other, and modern interpretation binds them into one sentence. This happens easily in damaged texts. A title may appear beside the final line of an earlier composition. A colophon may be mistaken for narrative. A later note may be treated as original content. Spacing carries meaning, but damage disturbs spacing. You lean closer to the horizontal line. Its depth varies. One end appears carefully drawn, the other fades into a surface abrasion. It could separate the 12th item from a calculation beneath it. The tablet does not decide. A second clue comes from handwriting. The numerical wedges seem slightly broader than the signs above. This may indicate another stylus, another writing session, or simple variation caused by pressure. If another hand added the numbers, the date could be commentary. A later scholar may have calculated at a period connected with the sequence. His note might never have been intended as part of the original code. The possibility offers a new development. The mysterious date may not describe an ancient event at all. It may preserve an ancient interpretation of an even older text. A scribe could have asked when the sequence was established, then written a calculated answer based upon tradition, king lists, ritual cycles, or symbolic arithmetic. His calculation would still be historically valuable. It would reveal how ancient scholars understood their own past. It would not necessarily reveal when the event actually occurred. The distinction is subtle but important. Ancient people reconstructed history too. They compared traditions, copied lists, filled gaps, and created chronologies reaching toward origins. Their methods differed from modern scholarship, but their desire to order the past was deeply familiar. The impossible date may therefore be evidence of ancient historical imagination. A scholar looked backward, found uncertainty, and answered it with number. Perhaps he trusted the result. Perhaps he copied it from an older commentary. Perhaps he placed it beside the sequence as one possibility. unaware that the mark's distinguishing commentary would later disappear. You feel the mystery changing again. It no longer asks whether a hidden civilization existed before known cities. It asks how ancient scholars created authority from inherited fragments. This question is quieter. It may also be more revealing. A date can discipline memory. Once a story receives a number, it begins to look fixed. Generations repeat the date, and the calculation becomes tradition. The same process occurs in many cultures. Genealogies expand. Reigns are added. Sacred eras are counted backward. The past becomes measurable even where direct records do not exist. The 12th code may sit at the centre of such a reconstruction. Its final position suggests completion, and completion invites its origin. Someone asks when the system began. Someone else provides a number. The number survives longer than the reasoning behind it. You consider the largest possible chronology one final time. It reaches into a period before writing, before temples of known form, and before organized states appear in the archaeological record. Could memory cross such distance? It is possible that oral traditions preserve broad environmental events, migrations, or sacred landscapes across many generations. It is less likely that they preserve exact numerical dates without stable recording systems. The precision may therefore be symbolic. A large total can express immeasurable age while still appearing mathematically ordered. Ancient scribes valued both meaning and calculation. The number may say very old. It may say before kingship. It may say before the present arrangement. Modern readers translate that distance into a specific calendar year because modern chronology expects exact placement. The ancient phrase may have expected reverence instead. Your mind settles around this possibility without embracing it fully. Perhaps the date belongs to mythic time. Perhaps it belongs to administrative calculation. Perhaps it is commentary, measurement, or misunderstood layout. Each option explains some details and leaves others unresolved. The tablet remains honest only when all remain visible. The date is reconsidered not by removing mystery, but by changing its centre. The question is no longer why scholars refuse to publish a forbidden year. The question becomes why one damaged number carries such emotional force. It promises that the known world began late. It suggests that forgotten system preceded every kingdom. It offers certainty where evidence offers only fragments. Perhaps that promise tells you more about human longing than about ancient chronology. The numerical cluster rests beneath the light. Smaller than the story built around it, its wedges remain unchanged while interpretations rise and fall. No scholar can publish certainty where the clay preserves doubt. No careful reader should demand it. The date may still contain an older truth, but that truth may concern memory, symbolism, or scholarly reconstruction rather than a lost historical calendar. You allow the number to become uncertain again. It does not disappear. It becomes deeper. And in that softened uncertainty, the tablet seems closer to its ancient world, where time was counted, remembered, renewed, and sometimes imagined beyond the reach of anyone living. The tablet rests alone inside a quiet room while darkness gathers beyond the glass. You stand close enough to see the faint ridges left by the reed stylus, each one holding a decision made by a hand that never expected yours to arrive. No final translation lies beside it. The label offers measurements, estimated period, clay description, and a cautious note about damaged writing. Nothing mentions a forbidden code, hidden civilization, or date capable of overturning history. The silence feels almost deliberate. Yet silence is not proof. It may reflect uncertainty, incomplete study, disputed ownership, limited resources, or simple lack of attention. Museums contain thousands of objects awaiting fuller examination, many less dramatic than the stories later attached to them. The fragment survives inside this ordinary condition. Its numbered structure remains. The altered 12th entry remains. The uncertain numerical cluster remains. Everything beyond those facts belongs to interpretation. You feel the weight of that distinction. A hidden truth does not always emerge as one secret sentence. Sometimes it appears as a pattern of human behaviour surrounding damaged evidence. People seek order. Institution preserve selected memories. Scholars hesitate. Audiences fill gaps. Legends gather where certainty weakens. The 12th code may therefore exist most powerfully as a question created between clay and imagination. The tablet offers enough structure to suggest a system, yet withholds enough context to prevent that system from becoming clear. This balance sustains the mystery. Too little evidence would produce only fantasy. Too much evidence would produce an ordinary translation. The fragment remains between them. Perhaps the 12 entries once governed a ceremonial sequence. Perhaps they arranged duties, measurements, months, rooms, whole categories of human service. Perhaps the final item marked closure. The language of enclosure, appointment, and foundation could fit several ancient institutions. Each possibility has historical support in broad form, but none can claim the fragment completely. The date behaves in the same way. It may describe duration. It may record quantity. It may belong to commentary. It may begin another column. It may preserve a symbolic chronology created by ancient scholars who were already searching for origins. The oldest reading remains possible only through several uncertain decisions. That does not make it worthless. It makes it fragile. Fragile ideas require careful handling just like fragile clay. A sensational interpretation grasps quickly. A responsible interpretation supports from beneath. The difference determines whether the object remains evidence or becomes a mirror for modern desire. You consider the scholar who refuses to publish the dramatic date. Perhaps that scholar fears ridicule. Perhaps institutional habits discourage unusual interpretations. Human motives are rarely pure. Yet caution alone does not prove suppression. The strongest explanation may still be that the evidence cannot carry the claim placed upon it. This conclusion sounds restrained. It is not empty. It reveals how history is constructed through thresholds of confidence. A sign becomes readable only when enough parallels support it. A date becomes historical only when chronology, material context, language, and independent evidence begin pointing in the same direction. One tablet rarely carries an age alone. Archaeology builds through accumulation. A settlement layer supports another site. A seal confirms an office. A contract names a ruler. An astronomical observation narrows a period. Many small pieces create a timeline stronger than any dramatic fragment. The mysterious date stands outside that network. For now, it has no independent support. That absence may change. A related tablet could emerge from an excavation. A forgotten fragment might be identified inside an old collection. A clearer copy may preserve the missing unit or reveal that the number means something entirely different. History remains open because evidence remains incomplete. Openness does not mean every answer is equally likely. It means confidence should move with proof. A quirky possibility lingers inside the museum itself. The matching fragment may already be present, catalogued decades ago under another description. Two broken edges could belong together. The thought feels almost romantic. Somewhere among rows of drawers, the missing noun, unit, or line may wait beneath tissue paper. A future researcher could notice the join and close a question that has survived for generations. The result may disappoint legend. The 12th code could become the 12th storage regulation. The impossible date could become a measure of barley. A mystery can end through ordinary grammar. That ending would not make the tablet less valuable. It would restore the ancient people behind it. Their concerns were often practical because practical matters determine whether communities endure. Grain, water, labour, ritual, inheritance, and seasonal order shaped daily survival. A rule about storage may reveal more about human life than a fantasy about hidden beings. Still, the possibility of deeper structure cannot be dismissed completely. The ancient world contains systems whose logic has been lost. Specialized traditions vanished when schools closed. Languages changed, institutions collapsed. A text can remain visible while its intellectual world disappears. Perhaps the tablet truly preserves the final element of an unknown classification. Perhaps 12 represented a complete arrangement connecting calendar, ritual, office, and social duty. The system may have seemed obvious to trained readers. Its obscurity belongs to us. The open scholarly debate therefore remains broader than one translation. How much lost structure can be reconstructed from partial archives? How far should comparison travel before similarity becomes forced? At what point does careful imagination become invention? No permanent rule answers these questions. Each fragment requires judgment. You look at the tablet's fingerprint pressed near the lower edge. The mark interrupts the writing slightly, suggesting the clay was handled while still soft. The person responsible may have been annoyed. Perhaps the mistake required repair. Perhaps nobody noticed. That small print returns the mystery to human scale. A hand shaped the clay. A hand wrote the sequence. A hand moved the tablet into your storage. A hand eventually dropped, buried, or discarded it. The object passed through your ordinary moments before becoming extraordinary through survival. The hidden timeline may also belong to ordinary continuity. Long before recorded history, communities learned how to manage rivers, count goods, preserve rituals, and organize labor. Later cities inherited these practices. Scribes transformed them into lists and rules. Temples attached them to the sacred origins. Scholars copied them after their first purposes faded. The 12th code could be one surviving knot inside that long chain. Its age may lie less in one impossible date than in the depth of inherited human practice. A rule can be older than the tablet carrying it. A custom can be older than the language used to explain it. A system can continue long after its founders are forgotten. This form of antiquity needs no lost empire. It grows through repetition. You sense the room becoming cooler as night deepens. The glass reflects your face faintly over the tablet, placing modern features above ancient signs. The reflection creates an uncomfortable image. You are reading the past. You are also covering it. Every interpretation places something of the present over the object. Curiosity, fear, hope, skepticism, and longing all enter the translation. Complete objectivity remains impossible. Honesty remains possible. You can admit where evidence ends. You can preserve several interpretations without pretending they hold equal strength. You can allow the tablet to remain unresolved. Perhaps this is the final lesson of the hidden system. Order is always incomplete. Calendars require correction. Archives lose pieces. Laws change through tears. Memories become legends. Certainty erodes like clay beneath water. The imagined 12th code promises completion because 12 feels whole, yet the fragment proves that completion can survive only as appearance. The sequence ends. The meaning does not. The date remains suspended between chronology, mathematics, ritual, and error. The scholar remains silent, not because truth has been defeated, but because truth has not yet become stable enough to speak confidently. Perhaps another fragment will change everything. Perhaps nothing will. The tablet may continue waiting beneath careful light, offering each generation the same narrow invitation. Look closely. Doubt honestly. Listen for the human voice beneath the legend. And perhaps the story is not yet complete. The room grows quieter now. and the tablet begins to recede behind the soft reflection in the glass. You no longer need to solve it tonight. The wedges can remain uncertain, the number can remain without scale, and the lost system can rest beyond the edge of complete understanding. Outside, first the city settles into its own repeating order. Lights disappear from windows, distant engines soften, and the night gathers around roofs, streets, rivers, and sleeping rooms somewhere. Another person looks upward and notices the moon moving through the same patient sky watched by ancient observers. You allow the old question to loosen. Perhaps the code was practical. Perhaps it was sacred. Perhaps it was both. Because ancient lives did not divide those worlds as sharply as modern thought prefers. Grain could be counted beneath divine names, and calendars could govern both festivals and hunger. The tablet does not demand certainty. It asks only that you remain near the mystery without forcing it open. Some doors survive because nobody remembers the key, and some truths survive only as quiet shapes pressed into fragile earth. Your breathing slows. The museum walls fade from imagination, replaced by cool darkness, distant water, and reeds moving softly along an unseen bank. A scribe sets down his stylus, a lamp shortens, fresh clay rests beneath his hand, holding words he believes will remain understood. They will not remain understood. Yet they will remain. That may be enough for tonight. The old cities sleep beneath soil and stone. Their names drift through memory, their canals vanish into the plain, and their voices soften into marks no living person can hear completely. Still the fragment waits. Still the question breathes. And perhaps somewhere beyond the missing corner, the story is not yet complete. Good night,